Meanings of the Quran. Volume 7. By Allama Parwez. Translated in English by Dr. Ejaz Rasool. Audiobook made by Abid Hussain. 1 Surah Yusuf, Chapter 12, Jamal-e-Yusufi. It has been noted in Volume 3 of the Meanings of the Quran how Ibrahim came to the area of Canaan and Syria after migrating from Malof, his place of abode. There, he established a state which prevailed during the time of the progeny of Ibrahim. His younger son, Ishaq, remained as the guardian of the state, but his elder son, Ismail, was put in position in Ejaz where the intensely demanding service of the supervision of the Kaaba was placed in his hands. Yaqub, the son of Ishaq, also remained in Canaan. But it appears that the state had shrunk in their time and become confined to the leadership of a tribe only. There is no detailed description given in the Quran about Ishaq and Yaqub. They have only been included among the category of the Anbiya, 2:136, 3:84. Yusuf, whose illuminating and eminent story becomes a cause for the adornment of these pages, was the son of Yaqub. I have recorded this account in detail in my book titled Ju-e-Noor. Whatever will now be mentioned here will mostly be quoted from this book. In connection with the story of Yusuf, two aspects appear prominently before us. One is that the details and circumstances of other Anbiya are dispersed like scattered pearls in different places in the Quran. According to the Quranic style of cross-referencing of verses, these have been selectively picked and assembled into a strand of glittering gems, whereas the story of Yusuf is narrated continuously in just one surah. The second is that the narratives of the other great and resolute Anbiya are the descriptions of those revolutions which they unleashed. In this connection, far more than these Anbiya, there is mention of the circumstances and conditions of those nations who opposed their invitation to truth and hacked and ultimately became destroyed and eliminated. The story of Yusuf is not an account of this kind of clash or revolution, it is the manifestation of this reality that by lifting him from an abode of dust, how the personal potential of an individual, the eminence of his character, and the virtue of his personality take him to the loftiest heights of the status and responsibility of being human. But this path is not a passage through the courtyard of a garden in which a man may move forward, meandering, sauntering and crooning, while enjoying the colors of spring. Instead, it is that tough path where chasms of errors are encountered at every step that test fortitude and deceive the eyes, and where if the foot slips even slightly, man falls straight into a hell of humiliation and ruin. Protecting garments from every thorn on this path, maintaining sure-footedness on every cliff edge, and advancing forward courageously, safely, and securely, definitely falls within the remit of steadfastness in affairs. This is that path in which every visionary eye witnesses the glowing manifestations of the radiant character of Yusuf at every step. 1.1 Reflection of the future in his mind. It has already been said that the birth of Yusuf took place in the family of Yaqub in the land of Palestine. People knew nothing about this child other than that he was just an ordinary shepherd. But the father's, Yaqub's, eyes which perceived reality, saw something other reflecting in the intellect of his son. He could read in clear words from the intelligence and wisdom, seriousness and perseverance bestowed by Allah on him, Yusuf, how the governess of nature was teaching him knowledge of the ways and techniques of the world and its affairs through taking care of flocks of sheep and herds of cattle. On the basis of these traits the son was becoming the star in his father's eyes, but for the other brothers this matter was smarting like a thorn in their eyes. It is from here that this story begins. But prior to this, as a prelude, a specific introduction of the Quran itself has been presented. It states, "This is a declaration of Allah, Alim and Rahim, ALR, that this is a book of a clear code of laws. We have made this Quran clear and perspicuous so that you can make full use of understanding and reasoning, so that you learn how to use your intellect, i.e. the aim of sending down the Quran is to fire up human intellect. O Rasool, by revealing this Quran on you through Wahi, we narrate the accounts of previous Anbiya and past nations through you in the best way. These are those accounts of which you were not aware before the revelation of the Quran. In these is also the story of Yusuf which is narrated now. 12:1-3. The meaning of the verses is clear, however, in verse number 2 one such great reality has appeared which we do not wish to simply move on from without discussion. It is stated, Inna anzalna Qur'anan Arabiyyan, that the style of expression of the Quran is very clear, pure, and well balanced. There is no crookedness in it, no kind of ambiguity in it. This then is the characteristic of the style of expression of the Quran. After this comes la'allakum taqilun, which is translated as so that you are able to understand, or you have understood. The meaning of this will be that the style of expression of the Quran is not such that it becomes understood automatically. That the student of the Quran will not need to do anything himself. Just as, for example, if there is light outside, then for the one wishing to see he needs do no more than keep his eyes open. After this, everything becomes visible automatically. This meaning of la'allakum taqilun is against the reality and wish of the Quran. The Quran does not become understood automatically by itself, for this something has to be enacted, and the Quran has concisely condensed this reality in one word. Taqilun is a verb of action, and action demands this element that the actor should perform that task. As far as my understanding goes, the word intellect has not been used as a verb in any language, at least definitely not in Urdu. Hence, taqilun simply cannot be translated in one word, nor can other words of this kind be translated. For example, in this way Allah has clearly explained His signs so that you can pay attention and reflect on them. 2:266. The meaning of la'allakum taqilun can be expressed in these kinds of words, so that you can make use of intellect, aql, so that you can bring your intellect into use. Further clarification of this meaning takes place in these types of verses where it is stated, these people remain as if deaf, dumb, and blind, and do not make use of intellect and reasoning. 2:171. This means that according to the Quran, aql is a potential which does not begin to function automatically by itself, only if it is put to use does it then play its role. If it is not utilized, then it remains unused. The Quran has called this potential kalab, where it states, so that their ability to use intellect, kalab, becomes awakened. 22:46. This implies that kalab is that means through which man brings his intellect into use. The object of this discussion is that human intellect is not that type of potential which comes into use automatically, like eyesight or hearing, it has to be brought into use. From this analysis it is clear that 1. In order to understand some issue, it is essential that its style of expression is clear, pure, explicit, and meaningful. This is why the Quran has stated repeatedly that its style of expression is extremely clear and perspicuous. 2. But its style of expression being clear and perspicuous does not mean that in order to understand its meaning man will have to do nothing himself, he will have to utilize his own intellectual ability. For the one who does not do this, the explanation from this style of expression of the Quran will not provide him with any benefit. This is beneficial for that nation which makes use of its intellect. Thus do we explain the signs in detail to a people who use their intellect, aql. 30:28. In this same surah a few verses later it is stated, in this account of Yusuf and his brothers there are signs of admonition and of counsel for those people who are in search of reality and who are in need of truth. 12:7. From this the Quran has informed us that in order to benefit from its contents, it is necessary that a hunger should arise in the human heart to reach the truth. The potential of the intellect will be awakened by this, and the Quranic meanings will become comprehensible. You can gauge from this the condition of those people who spend their whole life simply reading the Quran as najira. Najira means to keep chanting the words of the Quran without understanding their meaning and explanation. How can those people benefit from the Quran who try to acquire sawab by reciting these words repeatedly in one night, which is called shabina? Or those who, claiming to be translators or mufassir, or those who try to understand it through translations or tafsir, Also consider the intellect and reasoning of men of prior centuries as being the final word instead of using their own intellect and reasoning, or those who fall neither into the category of Sa'ilin, those who question, nor into the category of Akilian, those who use intellect. The Quran can only be comprehended by those who make the effort to understand the Quran according to the Quran itself in the light of whatever level their human knowledge, experience, and observation has reached. For this, an advantage can be acquired from the knowledge and understanding of others, but this cannot be taken as an authority. The authority of the Quran is the Quran itself. Following this introduction, let us come to the story of Yusuf, which begins in this way. Behold, Yusuf said to his father that I have seen, in my dream, 12:100, that there are 11 stars, and the sun and the moon, and these are prostrate before me. 12:4. Hearing the dream of the son, the father, Yaqub, replied. The father told his son not to relate this dream to his brothers, who were half-brothers, 12:59, otherwise they will begin plotting some secret scheme against you. The truth is that by creating dissension among men, shaitan, emotions of jealousy and prejudice, turns brother against brother. 12:5. Just see how the jealousy of the brothers of Yusuf is described as the enmity of shaitan here. A detailed explanation about shaitan and Iblis has been given in the Meanings of the Quran, Volume 2, that these are the names for the misguided emotions of man. The father emphasized this to the son, Yusuf, and together with this, also told him how bright his future appeared to be to him. He said, "From the signs I see in you of realizable potentials, it appears to me that your Rabb will select you for some great purpose and will bestow on you such wisdom and vision so that your insight could reach the root cause of matters very quickly." Ta'il al-Hadith. He will shower you with his bounties, and through you will complete his favors on the family of Yaqub, just as he did before this on your forefathers, completed his favors on Ibrahim and Ishaq. Surely, your Rabb is aware of every affair and his decisions are based on wisdom. 12:6. Details about what is meant by Ta'il al-Hadith will appear later on. Together with this, it will also be explained how the completion of favors was accomplished on Yusuf. After this we are informed about what transpired to Yusuf and his brothers, but before this it is made clear that the Quran is not a book of history in which the circumstances and details from past eras are merely mentioned in the form of events. It is a code of life for human existence, and the historical evidences are presented as an explanation and support for some aspect of this code. As has been noted earlier, the Quran states, before moving forward, this reality should be fully comprehended that the aim from this story is not to describe the mutual conflict between Yusuf and his brothers. In this there are clear signs of admonition and wisdom for every one of those individuals who considers himself in need of these signs. First and foremost, Rasool and the Jamaat-e-Momineen should come to know that in the mission which they have stood up to take on, they will initially face all kinds of hardships from their own kith and kin, but ultimately the success will be theirs alone. 12:7. Due to an intensity of jealousy and resentment, the brothers of Yusuf formulated the scheme that somehow or other this thorn needs to be removed. The brothers of Yusuf used to say to each other that it is a strange thing that our father, as compared to us, loves Yusuf and his real brother more, though we are a greater number, and as a consequence of this we also have more power. Surely in this matter our father is committing a big error of judgment. 12:8. So they held a mutual consultation that the solution for this problem is that Yusuf should be killed or flung at a far-off place, so that after that our father's whole attention remains directed towards us and all our affairs are put to rights. Salihin. 12:9. The word Salihin at the end of the verse merits attention. Amongst us the translation of Salihin is viewed as being the pious people of Allah, and A'mal-e-Salha as being righteous deeds. If this is taken to be the meaning of this verse, that they said that Yusuf should be separated from the father so that after this the full attention of the father remains focused towards us, and in this way we become honorable people, then this does not make sense. What they had stated was that the current situation is such that the full attention of the father remains focused on Yusuf, because of which our affairs remain unsettled. If this hurdle is removed, then our circumstances will improve. Sulah, Islah, Salha etc. mean the betterment and rectification of circumstances. The meaning of A'mali Salha is those deeds and such a system in which both the human self becomes reformed, and harmony and balance are created within society. The Islah of both the individual and society ensues. Details of this have been covered in the meanings of the Quran, Volume 1. It is mentioned in the Torah that one among the brothers, Rabban, said, "Do not kill Yusuf, throw him into some blind well." It is stated in the Quran. One of them said, "Do not kill Yusuf. If you must do something against him, then throw him in the depths of a blind well. Some caravan passing by will take him out, and in this way your objective will be achieved." 12:10. After this plotting, they came to their father. So they all preferred the scheme and, coming to their father they said, "O father! What is this that in the matter of Yusuf you do not place your trust in us, and you do not allow him to go here and there with us, though we are his well-wishers from the heart? We are going out tomorrow, send him along with us also, so that he should eat and drink, play for amusement, we all will protect him." 12:11-12. It seems as if Yaqub used to keep Yusuf close to him for his special training, but the other sons used to consider this to be a lack of trust. This is why they complained to the father that why does he not trust them in this matter. In reply, Yaqub said that the issue is not one of a lack of trust. The father replied, "It is not a matter of distrust. To my mind the risk is that you take him with you into the forest for a walk and play, and if you become distracted even momentarily, that a wolf might eat him up." 12:13. The Quran has not mentioned what the age of Yusuf was at that time. From the fear expressed by Yaqub, it appears that his age at that time was not much. The Torah states that his age was 17 years at that time. But this is not supported from the fear expressed by Yaqub as noted in the Quran. In any event, at this anxiety expressed by the father the sons replied. They replied, "O father! You are strange, if he is eaten up by a wolf despite the presence of such a great number of us, then what is the point of our existence? This will then mean that we are absolutely useless." 12:14. Attacks by wolves were not an unusual event in the life of a shepherd. Yaqub had expressed his fear as a result of this thought. But it appears that the evil character of the sons appropriated this as a link in their chain of deceitfulness and deception. The brothers took him along, and according to their carefully crafted secret plot, dropped Yusuf into a blind well. Hence, they took him with them, and all agreed on this that he should be dropped into a deep well. 12:15. 1.2 The plight of Yusuf. Just imagine this heart-rending and dreadful scene, that the beloved son of a father is being buried alive at the hands of his brothers. What must have passed through the heart of Yusuf in this dreadful grave? But at the same time that they were cutting Yusuf off, in their view, from all the means and resources of the world, the true master of these resources and of consequences, immediately sent a wahi, stating not to grieve. At precisely that time when they were throwing Yusuf into the well, we informed him via wahi, "Do not grieve, that you will remain safe and secure, and after this such a day will come, that you will tell them what they did with you, and they will not be able to understand, how you survived and reached this stature." 12:90. 12:15. 1.3 Return of the brothers. These stony heart embodiments of perfidy and deceitfulness arrived back home towards evening, but with a strange excuse concocted. After throwing Yusuf into the well, they came weeping to their father late at night and said, "O father! We went to the forest and made Yusuf sit with the gear, and we became engrossed in competing in races to see who wins. In the meantime a wolf came and tore Yusuf to pieces and ate him up. We know that no matter how truthful we are, you will not believe what we say, but the incident occurred just as we have explained it to you." 12:16-17. Cast another glance at the last part of the verse. And then see how the thudding heartbeats of the guilty consciences of the brothers of Yusuf are bursting out from under the fluttering veils of deceit and deception, no matter how truthful we may be. You will, however, never believe us. But such an illustration of the impulsiveness of the imperceptible state of the subconscious mind is a characteristic of the style of expression of the Quran. They began to falsely weep and wail, and together with this also brought with them the tunic of Yusuf stained with fake blood stains so that this could be presented as evidence to fulfill this plot of theirs. And they had also brought with them the tunic of Yusuf which they had stained with fake blood. 12:18. From their point of view they had not left any stone unturned in this deception, but for the piercing vision of the one possessing wisdom, there was no difficulty in differentiating between these kinds of lies and the truth. Yaqub replied, "Why are you inventing all these tales? This whole episode is nothing more than a deception of your own selves." After hearing this story and seeing the shirt, the father said that a wolf has definitely not eaten Yusuf. This is all just a tale hatched by you which your deceptive selves have made seem alluring to you, that this plot will be very successful. In any case, it is better for me that I make use of patience and courage, and not let the unity of the family become fragmented, and seek Allah's help in whatever you are describing. 12:18. While this was taking place there, it so happened that a caravan passed by this route on which that well was located into which Yusuf had been thrown. What happened there was that a caravan came into the forest, and they sent their vanguard person in search of water. He reached this well and dropped a bucket into it. From deep in the well Yusuf called out. He glanced into the well and saw that there was a youth there. He called to the other people from the caravan and said, "Listen to some good news. A youth has been found in the well." They took him and hid him so that they could sell him in some far-off place. They did all this away from the prying eyes of people, but Allah was indeed witnessing everything. 12:19. It is stated in the Torah that this caravan was of Ishmaelite Arabs which was taking its merchandise to Egypt. Furthermore, that the brothers of Yusuf had sold him to the people of the caravan in return for 20 coins. But the Quran states that the people of the caravan had kept him hidden so that no one could arrive to claim him. Even today, traveling tribes who engage in child trafficking take the children who fall into their hands to far-off places. Now a new phase starts in the life of Yusuf, and just reflect in what harrowing circumstances this phase commences. We have already mentioned that life in Palestine was a Bedouin life like that of those who graze their livestock in forests. Compared to this, Egypt at that time was at those heights of civilization and culture such that even today the eyes stare in astonishment when its buried treasures are unearthed, that in that era, and these kinds of specimens of civilization and culture. Just as even today civilized urban populations view the uncivilized life of rural folk with a certain disdain, the inhabitants of Egypt used to look down upon the surrounding shepherds with an intense aversion. Nevertheless, a youth belonging to the shepherds of the desert region reaches the populace of Egypt, and that, too, in this way that he is a captive in the hands of a caravan of strangers which is taking him to market to sell as a commodity. The people of the caravan sold Yusuf, in the Egyptian marketplace, with injustice and inhumanity for a paltry price which was not more than a few dirhams. They behaved in a detached manner in his sale, 1, because they had acquired this commodity free of cost, and 2, they may also have thought that if someone came forward to claim him then there will be a problem. 12:20. They sold the slave in an open marketplace, and because the commodity had come into their hands free of cost, they did not even pay any attention to how much he is being sold for. Whatever was offered, they hastily took it. Allah is great. A slave, and a slave sold with such disrespect. This was how he entered Egypt. It is noted in the Torah that the person who bought him was called Potiphar. The Quran has only referred to him with the title of Aziz, someone very respected or a holder of authority, since the aim was to introduce his status, not his actual rank. The Aziz bought Yusuf in the status of a slave. but within a very short time he judged from his honesty, truthfulness, balanced character, and God-given wisdom that this boy is worthy of complete trust being put in him, and that the organization and administration of the house can be placed in his hands. Hence, the Quran states, "The person who bought Yusuf told his wife to treat him with respect. Akramai matwehu, do not treat this boy the way you would ordinary slaves, because from his appearance and conduct it appears that he is from a good background, hence, it is possible that he may become a cause for some benefit for us, or we may even adopt him as our son." 12:21. By saying Akramai matwehu, keep him with respect, the Quran has condensed a big part of the story within 2 concise words. This was the first revolution in the life of Yusuf, i.e., he entered the house in the status of a slave, and that, too, as a slave from Canaan, in other words, a very backward slave according to the Egyptians, and within a short time he became the trustworthy administrator of the household of a high-ranking official of Egypt. In this way we established Yusuf in the land of Egypt and made such an arrangement that he receives a good education and training, and he acquires the ability to understand affairs, and to draw correct conclusions from events. Allah is in full control of all his schemes, but most people do not possess knowledge of this. How and why is this taking place? 12:21. Just ponder that for the scheme of Mashiach to reach from the starting point to its completion, what kinds of stages of cause and effect have to be traversed. But because the secret is hidden from the eyes of ordinary people, they cannot therefore discern the links in these schemes. In this way, Yusuf started to develop within this modern environment. Consequently, when Yusuf, after receiving training in these kinds of surroundings, attained adulthood, he was acquainted with methods of organization and worldly affairs and was equipped with abundant knowledge and vision. These were those things which could not have been available to him in his life in the desert. But he achieved these because he lived his life here in a very upstanding manner. Whoever lives their life like this, they can also attain a similar reward. However, wahi cannot be obtained like this. 12:22. After Yusuf had passed through a few more stages of his life, Allah then bestowed him with the power of administration and the bounty of knowledge, and all this was a consequence of his eminent conduct. Wa kazalika najul mosanin, 12:22. Just note how, together with this very first revolution, the Quran has directed the vision towards learning a lesson and receiving instruction from a story, i.e., that this revolution did not take place merely as a chance occurrence but materialist according to that immutable law of Allah, that the essential outcome of an eminent character and a purified conduct is always this. Wa kazalika najul mosanin. Now begins the next link in this sparkling tale. And the caravan of excitement enters that valley in which temptations which test the patience of the self, and scenes which deceive the eyes containing thousands of means for the trial of both character and conduct, are spread with their camouflage traps all around on the land. The age of Yusuf at that time was of full adulthood. His initial life had been spent in the natural environment of wild jungle, far from the stressful and artificial life of society and culture. Even today, if you want to judge how a simple and unpolluted life enhances human beauty, then look at some child from a free tribe. The state of poverty and deprivation such that there are no clothes on the body but is clad in rags, but if you look at health and strength, these are coursing exuberantly through every part of the body. Beauty is the name of health, and when health and youth combine, then with their combination such a crystallized form of attraction and rapture becomes created in which life becomes manifest in its full energy and exuberance. Then the righteous blood of the son of a Nabi in his veins, and along with all these characteristics the gold plating of the beauty of chastity, vigorous and healthy youth, if it passes through the purified medium of heart and vision, then what greater beauty can there be than this? This is Yusuf. And on the other side is the wife of Aziz, the creation of the permissiveness of the civilization and culture, the product of an environment of luxury and prosperity, beauty glittering with the adornments of wealth. So much so, that there is all the wherewithal of attraction and allurement on both sides. But on the one side the emotions of the self are in full command, and on the other side the sovereignty of the limits of Allah on the inclinations of the self. The consequence was that Yusuf never had even a passing thought in that direction. But the fire in the heart of the wife of Aziz kept simmering like a silent flame, until one day frenzied passion acquired the form of an unchecked blaze. Yusuf was inside the room, and that full embodiment of turbulent wantonness arrived there with thousands of charged passions in her heart and mind. The doors were closed, and seductiveness with all its displays and expectations sought a passionate response. The Quran has summed up this whole incident in a few words and states, "And the woman in whose house Yusuf was living, i.e., the wife of Aziz, felt an attraction towards him. But no evil ever arose in the intention of Yusuf. Finally, that woman made up her mind to force him against his will to accept her demand by alluring and seducing him. So, one day she closed all the doors of the house and asked Yusuf to come to her. Yusuf replied that, Allah forbid. I can never do such a thing. My Rabb has caused me to reach to such a highly eminent and beautiful state of character and conduct. Do you desire to make me fall from this high stature? This can never happen. This is a clear transgression of boundaries, and those men who cross the limits can never succeed." 12:23. But the flames of the fire of her emotions were becoming like a wildfire. Forgetting everything in this obsession of hers, she had reached the extreme limits in this matter. Just reflect that there was no third person in that room as a witness. The full means for the satiation of the emotions of the self were available, yet what was that thing which, despite this overwhelming storm, did not permit the chastity of Yusuf to be stained? Just the thought of one Allah, i.e., Iman on this matter, and an unwavering Iman, that when there is no other to witness, then there is one such being present who sees all. The certainty of this fact that, according to the law of requital of Allah, every wrong deed produces its destructive effect whether there is anyone around to apprehend you or not. This was the difference between the wife of Aziz and Yusuf. Over the eyes of one were the thick covers of the lusts of the self, while the vision of the other, perceiving reality clearly, was witnessing the unveiling of the divine law despite this environment of omission of the self. Otherwise, from the point of view of being human, the desires of youth were on both sides. Just observe how beautifully the Quran has described this distinct difference, despite being brief and concise. It states, "But that woman had determined on this matter, and she had created such circumstances that if the bright and illuminating ethical standard of his Rabb had not been before Yusuf, he would have also inclined. The result of this moral standard remaining before him was that he remained aloof from this lustful act and did not commit evil. And in this way, he proved through his eminent conduct that he was from among our devoted servants." Later on, that woman herself also accepted and acknowledged that the intention of Yusuf did not become corrupted. 12:51. 12:24. This account is so captivating, heartwarming and gripping that it is the demand of hearts that do not wink even, in case a wrinkle may appear in the colorful pageant. But such a very delicate and important point is reached here, the elaboration of which is of greater value than the lure of the narrative, and so we are apologetic for this digression. In verse 12:24, it is stated, "If in front of Yusuf there was no bright and shining moral value of his Rabb, he would also have inclined." 12:24. From the meaning which is traditionally reported about this in our books of Tafsir, the character of Yusuf becomes torn to shreds. The summary of these meanings is that that woman formed an intention to take wrong steps, adultery, and Yusuf also formed this intention, but he stayed aloof in practical terms because he had witnessed the Burhani Rabb. Those who made such comments did not even consider that the inclination and intention to do evil is no less a sin than the act of evil itself. How much significance is given to inclination and intention according to the Quran can be assessed from this, that it has imposed the death penalty for deliberate killing, with intention, while it has ordered the paying of blood money, dayut, for killing in error, without intention, 4:92-93. It has not declared an unintentional mistake in general social interactions to be deserving of accountability. Only that is deserving of accountability in which there is an intention of the heart, 33:5. The support for this also comes from this supplication, 2:286, in which it is stated that there should be no accountability for the mistake which is made accidentally or unintentionally. In this connection, there is another point which merits attention. According to the Quran, zulm, injustice, is a severe crime, but there are two types of zulm. One zulm is that which is perpetrated on someone else. The other zulm is that which is committed against one's own self, 3:117. This can be understood through an example. You do an injustice to someone deliberately. The effect which this has on him is an injustice done to him. But the effect which occurs on your own self from this is an injustice by you yourself. The other form is that some kind of infringement against someone has occurred by you unintentionally. From this, there has been a zulm on him, but no zulm has transpired by you on your own self. The third form is that in which you formed an intention to do injustice to someone, but this injustice did not materialize. As a result of this, no zulm occurred on that person, but a zulm has occurred by you on your own self. In the story under consideration, this evil deed did not materialize, but that woman became declared as a criminal because she had formed an intention for this. If the same assumption is also made about Yusuf, that he had also formed an intention for this, then what would be the difference between him and that woman? Hence, to say that Yusuf had also formed this intention, but that he was not able to bring his intention to fruition because he had witnessed the burhan of his Rabb, does not suit the eminent stature of a Nabi. Then also note that Yusuf has said in the first sentence, 1. Ma'azi Allah. I seek the protection of the divine laws and the values of Allah. Then he said, 2. My Rabb has blessed me with an eminent character, how can I stain this mirror? And then in clear words after this is this decision of Allah, 3. According to his law of requital, a zalim can never prosper. And zina, adultery and fornication, is blatant zulm. Could Yusuf, the holder of these ideals and possessor of these intentions, ever form an intention for adultery? Ma'azi Allah. The meaning of the verse is clear. That such circumstances had become created that, in the way in which the wife of the Aziz had formed the intention to take this step, because she did not have the divine standards before her, similarly, if the opposite party had also been the same who did not have these divine standards before him, then he, too, would have agreed in this. But because Allah's burhan, sign, was before Yusuf, hence it was not possible that he would have concurred in this. Here, the Quran has elaborated the difference between these two inclinations of the heart. One is the inclination of the individual who is not an adherent of any higher value, and the second is of the one who considers himself to be an adherent of these values. An example of the former was the wife of the Aziz, and the latter was a reflection of the character of Yusuf. Regarding the Burhani Rab which Yusuf had witnessed, there are bizarre and outlandish tales to be found in the books of Tafsir. The common thread in them is as follows. Yusuf saw that his father, Yaqub, is standing with his finger in his mouth, and he struck the chest of Yusuf with his hand. Allah has called his code of values and laws, the Quran, as Burhan from your Rabb, 4:174, hence every command of Allah, his every law, every standard of his is divine Burhan. When Yusuf had said that those who do zulm can never prosper, 12:23, this was the greatest of all the Burhans of Allah which was in front of him, and it was because of this that he remained free of the intention for this wrong step. And the biggest reason of all is that which Allah himself has noted in these words, that he was from among our righteous servants, 12:24, about whom Iblis himself had said. He said, O my Rabb, in the way in which you have deprived me from the blessings of life and have closed the path of success on me, I will now also do this, so that I will make the benefits and means of physical life appear so alluring to people that they will remain trapped in them, and completely ignore the higher aims of human life, and in this way, like me, they also become deprived of the true blessings of life. 1539. True, I will not be able to influence those who are your devoted servants, and they will keep themselves under the obedience of Wahi, hence, rebellious emotions will not be able to overwhelm them. 1540. And Allah had declared, "You will not be able to exert control on these devotees of mine. Your control will only be on those who, by abandoning this balanced path, would follow behind you." 1542. Hence, how could Yusuf fall into the alluring trap of these deluding spectacles? By carefully negotiating all of these thorny bushes, the servants of Allah pass safely through. Now let us move to the next link in this story of radiance and enlightenment. At the spurning by Yusuf, becoming overwhelmed by her emotions, that woman fell to imposing herself physically on him. Saving himself, Yusuf ran in an attempt to exit the room. That woman also leapt forward with a view to blocking him. Yusuf ran towards the door in order that he could get out somehow, and that woman ran after him to stop him from escaping. 1225. By leaping towards the door, each wanted to outrun the other. She was not able to get ahead of Yusuf, so she grabbed at his shirt from the back, and it tore. The woman seized the shirt of Yusuf from behind, but Yusuf speedily moved forward, and his shirt became torn from the back. 1225. And in front? But in the meantime Yusuf was successful in opening the door. The door opened, and what did they see but the husband of the woman standing before them? And both of them saw that the husband of the woman was standing outside the door. 1225. This unexpected occurrence changed the direction of the emotional state of the heart of the wife of the Aziz. In any event, she was purely a slave to her lust. She immediately stooped to that most vile tactic which is a trait of those who possess this kind of character. In an instant that woman made up a story, and without hesitating, said to her husband, "What should be the punishment for the individual who forms an intention to rape your wife? Should not his punishment be to send him to prison? Or maybe he should be given an even more severe punishment than this." 1225. Yusuf replied. On hearing this, Yusuf said, "She is telling a lie. She herself did all this through trickery and deception, and she kept on pressing me that I should commit this wrong act, but I have escaped by fleeing from her." 1226. 1.4 Witness from within the family. She is accusing him of being the culprit, and he is not only denying the accusation of crime, but instead declares her as being the offender. There was no third person in the room. Who could Yusuf have produced as a witness of his innocence? But when the matter proceeded further, a wise and astute man from the family of the woman herself said that when no other witness can be obtained, then we should look at the circumstantial evidence. When the matter advanced a bit further, an acceptable person from the family of the woman herself gave this decision that if the shirt of Yusuf is torn from the front, then this woman is truthful, and Yusuf is a liar, and if the shirt is torn from the back, then this woman is a liar, and Yusuf is truthful. 12:26-27. He established a principle which was indeed decisive. When the Aziz checked, the shirt of Yusuf was torn from the back, from which it became clearly evident that he had been trying to run away and his wife was trying to prevent him by seizing him from behind. Therefore, when the shirt was examined, it was torn at the back. From this it became clear that Yusuf is truthful, and the woman is a liar. At this, the husband of the woman said, to his wife, "It is a snare of you women. Truly, mighty is your snare." Inakida Kuna Azim 56. 1228. Ponder on these words in the verse, Inakida Kuna Azim, truly mighty is your snare. It is apparent what the common perception of women was in the civilization and culture of that era. It should be made clear that this was the statement of the Aziz of Egypt. Some simple-minded people present this sentence as divine evidence in support of the artfulness and duplicity of the female gender. I.e., they say, "Sir, women happen to be sacks of deceit and deception, see what it states in the Quran about them, Inakida Kuna Azim 1.5 Inakida Kuna Azim. But the Quranic message is free from such accusations. According to it, neither is man a model of honesty and righteousness merely by virtue of being a man, and nor is woman merely by being a woman, a figure of deceitfulness and artifice. The potential for honesty and trustworthiness, duplicity and deception, exists in both of them, and both are worthy of respect or deserving of condemnation according to their deeds. Let us pause for a moment here. For the proof of a crime, eyewitnesses are usually required, but in the system of justice another evidence also merits significance, and that evidence is incidental or circumstantial evidence, i.e., reaching some conclusion by observing and studying the circumstances and conditions of the incident site. In modern times the study of these details has acquired scientific importance. It also includes physical investigation and inquiry, e.g., a blood test from the victim, the injury, and the mutual connection between the weapon used for causing the injury, etc. These evidences are generally considered as specialties of modern times or of a civilized era, but it is surprising to see from this statement of the Quran that even in those ancient times such importance was given to circumstantial evidence. In the case of the witness mentioned here, he proved through circumstantial evidence that the criminal is the woman, and not Yusuf. Although the Quran has not itself presented this method of proving the crime, however, from the manner in which it has described it, it is clear that this has its support. If it had not been in favor of this, then it would have stated that this technique cannot be declared as being acceptable for proof of a crime. In any case, circumstantial evidence is of great importance in the investigation of crimes and regarding the conclusion. But in the laws which have been implemented in Pakistan, and are being implemented, a very different technique has been adopted for proving a crime. In connection with the crime of zina, adultery and fornication, see the meanings of the Quran, Volume 4. It has been said in this that for the proof of this crime, it is essential that 4 witnesses provide evidence that they witnessed the act of penetration with their own eyes. If 4 eyewitnesses are not available, or if among them there is a difference in even part of the evidence, then the accused will be set free and the witnesses will be declared as criminal. It is stated in the famous and authoritative book, Fatwa al-Amjiri, of Fiqh Hanafi, that if 3 witnesses gave an eyewitness account, and the 4th witness also supported them but said that he saw the accused man and woman under a quilt, then as a result of this, punishment, had, will not be meted out to the accused, and the first 3 witnesses will be declared as criminals of false accusation, and they will each be given 80 lashes. At the time of implementation of these laws, Taqi-Islam recorded a detailed discussion of these and stated that these are impossible to implement. According to these laws, no crime can be proved against any accused. But in this era, who is ready to listen to the voice of the Quran? After that, the President of Pakistan himself, General Muhammad Zia-ul-Haq, declared that according to the kind of evidence which has been declared as a condition, the crime simply cannot be proven. These laws, Hadud Ordinance, were implemented in February 1979. A few days later, he gave an interview to a television team from CBS, USA. The interviewer objected that these laws are very barbaric. In reply to this, the president said, "This is correct, but I will clarify it. Instead of punishment, Islam emphasizes deterrence. If you keep an eye on this philosophy which is working behind these severe punishments, then you will see that according to this law of witness which is being implemented, not even 1 among 1,000 criminals will be able to be punished." The editor-in-chief, Mr. Michael O'Neill, of the internationally famous magazine Asia Week, published from Hong Kong, met the president at the end of 1981. The report of which was published in this magazine in the December 4, 1981 issue. In this meeting there was a detailed conversation about these laws. In reply to this objection of his that, according to these laws, no criminal could even be given a punishment, the president replied, "This is correct that this does not take place. You cannot stone people to death. The fundamental philosophy of the Quranic laws is that you should have such a power with you which can prevent people from committing crime. Just think, is it possible to get 4 such witnesses who can give evidence that they witnessed the act of penetration with their own eyes? This is impossible. But despite this, these laws still continue to exist in the state of Pakistan. These laws are in fact based on those laws of fiqh which were formulated by the lawmakers of the times of our era of Malukiyyat 1,000 years ago. And within Malukiyyat and the capitalist system, these kinds of crimes are generally commonplace in the upper strata of society. We do not wish to cast aspersions on the intention of anyone. But it appears that though the punishments for these crimes have been kept very severe, they are tied to such conditions according to which the crime simply cannot be proven, neither the crime can be proven, nor can the punishment be administered. But these laws were neither Islamic, nor eternal, that we are duty bound to obey them. For the Muslim Ummah, the Book of Allah, the Quran, is an eternal and immutable code of life whose commands and laws the Ummah of every era, i.e. the Islamic State, keeping in view the requirements of its time, will implement through mutual consultation. It should be emphasized that the Islamic State is that one in which all its affairs are conducted within the bounds of the Quran. The Quran has neither imposed the condition for eyewitnesses for proof of the crime of zina, nor has it declared rajam, stoning to death, as the punishment for it. Now let us continue with the story. The Aziz of Egypt reproached his wife in this manner and then said to Yusuf to put this matter behind him. To confirm the vindication of Yusuf, he once again called upon his wife to ask for forgiveness for her errors, as the crime is indeed yours. So it is stated in the next verse. He said to Yusuf, overlook this matter, bury it in the ground. Women are like that, what can be done? Then he said to his wife, you are in error, apologize to Yusuf for your fault. 1229. From this it also becomes clear that in such a culture which is based on the absence of Allah, and in which moral degradation becomes commonplace, how much can remain there of the attributes of honor and dignity? If this event had taken place in some Bedouin tribe, which are considered backward and ignorant according to urbanist society, the honor of the husband would have beheaded such a wife. But just look at this son of civilization, that this incident took place before his eyes. The crime of the wife was proven, and the most that he said to the wife was simply this, that your cohort is very deceitful, and said to Yusuf, O son, do not take this incident any further, just end it here. This was not just the outcome of the ancient Egyptian civilization 4,000 years ago. In every one of those civilizations which is not raised on the foundations of the boundaries defined by Allah, honor and chastity are considered to be the remit of backward peoples. In this, the outlook of both men and women becomes this. The fact is that integrity is produced through discipline of the self, while under the rule of civilization Allah is rejected for this very reason, so that no restrictions are imposed on the desires of the self. 1.6 The meeting of ladies. After this, the Quran has described the next link in this story. When this incident became known widely, then mutual whisperings started among the ladies of the town. They said that the wife of Aziz has tried to lure and seduce her slave, she is mad for his love. But the technique she adopted for this was wrong, the outcome of which was that her aim was not achieved. The slave was declared innocent and she was declared a criminal. She should have done it not like that, but like this, so that either she could have achieved her aim, or the slave could have been declared a criminal. 1230. When the wife of Aziz heard their suggestion, she said that this should also be tested, and she, secretly, invited them to a dinner. She laid the table for them and placed the knives, cutlery etc., before them. Then she called for Yusuf. So they tried doing all that for which this whole arrangement was made, but no trick of theirs worked. At this, they became convinced of the strength of character of Yusuf. And they exclaimed, Allah be praised. He is not a human being, he is truly some angel worthy of respect. Now they came to the second part of their scheme, so that if the aim is not achieved then Yusuf becomes declared as a criminal. For this they wounded their hands. This was their great trick. 1250. 1231. Note that the Quran has used the words kata yad, cutting of hand, here. The meaning of this is not that they had severed their hands from their wrists, the meaning is either merely to halt the hand or of wounding the hands. From this the meaning becomes clear where the Quran has used the words kata yud for the punishment of a thief. See the meanings of the Quran, Volume 4. Another point is also worthy of attention. Whatever happened in this assembly, Yusuf has termed it as a kaid, trick, subterfuge, of these women, 1233, 1250. And he prayed to his Rabb to provide him with the strength to confront their tricks, 1233. From this it also appears that these women were trying to lure Yusuf towards themselves as well. This is also supported from this that when the king investigated this matter, he had said to these women, i.e., not solely to the wife of Aziz but also to the other women. Consequently, the king himself had this case investigated, and said to these women to speak truthfully that when you desired to turn Yusuf away from his intent, what incident took place at that time? They replied that by Allah, we did not see anything relating to evil in Yusuf, he was completely innocent. 1251. From these testimonies it is clear that not only the wife of the Aziz, but the other women of the society also tried to attract Yusuf towards themselves. Hence it is possible that in this assembly, by the injuring of their hands due to becoming flustered and awestruck at Yusuf's beauty is only an act of theirs from which the objective may be to display their own amorousness. This is because psychologically this is a very effective tactic that someone's beauty should be flattered so highly, and that they should be made conscious of the fact that even the greatest of people lose control of their senses and awareness on seeing them. After this it is stated, the wife of Aziz challenged her friends, well, you too have tested him and seen. This is that slave about whom you were taunting me, that I could not even entice a slave to acquiesce. I tried everything to turn him from his intent, but nothing had any effect on him. 1232. 1.7 The sentiment of revenge. After this, that woman became vindictive and she brazenly declared, even now if he does not obey my wish then I will definitely have him imprisoned. And he will have to suffer humiliation and disgrace, because now, as a result of your trick, there is solid evidence to prove a crime against him, that he laid a hand on you too, and in defending yourselves your hands were injured. 1232. Just envisage this scene, that there is a procedure in the world whereby people are handed over to the confinement of prisons because they could not keep their emotions in check and laid their hand on the honor of someone. Here, the matter is different. Yusuf is being threatened with imprisonment because why did he maintain control over his emotions? This was a new challenge. The comfortable life of a palace, respect and status, wealth and glamour, and in contrast to this, the wretchedness of a dungeon. Yusuf had the choice to select whichever one he wished from these two options. Without hesitation, he declared with the full force of iman and certitude. By now Yusuf had clearly seen what the intentions of these women were. So he decided that he will bear the difficulties of confinement in a prison but will not allow the staining of his character. He said to his Rabb that the thing to which they invite me, compared to this I prefer to go to prison. O Allah! Help me and give me strength so that I remain steadfast. This is because if this does not happen, and I become trapped by their deceit and become agreeable towards them, then this will be a great digression from truth. 1233. The gaze of the women only witnessed the beautiful appearance of Yusuf, but for eyes which have depth of vision, the radiance of the beauty of his character far exceeded the beauty of his appearance. Here, see once again that Yusuf had stated that prison is indeed far better than that to which these women invite me. From this that point also becomes affirmed to which we have referred about the assembly for dinner, i.e. that the arrangements for this whole assembly were for this purpose, that the women should entice Yusuf towards themselves. And for the achievement of this aim they employed all kinds of trickeries, one of which was the ruse of the cutting of hands. The moment this sincere devotee of Allah called upon his Rabb, from the other side his Rabb responded. Hence his Rabb blessed his prayer with acceptance. Consequently their trick could not work, and they failed in their attempt to lure him towards themselves. Surely, Allah is all-hearing and all-knowing. 1234. 1.8 Imprisonment and confinement without crime. When the wife of the Aziz of Egypt saw that her threat also remained futile, she decided to make the threat materialise, and following consultation with her female confidants, fabricated some tale due to which the Aziz and his associates found it appropriate to imprison Yusuf for a period of time. After having failed in this way, these women launched a false case against Yusuf. The judges saw from various aspects that Yusuf is innocent, but despite this they considered it befitting that Yusuf should be apportioned the punishment of imprisonment for a period of time. In this kind of society the prerogatives of the elite faction are of this kind. Consequently, Yusuf was made to enter the prison. 1235. Before proceeding, cast another eye on this aspect of the journey. The Aziz of Egypt had seen how his wife was inclined towards Yusuf, but despite this he could not remove Yusuf from the palaces. This is because his wife would never allow this, nor he could stop his wife from her malign aims. This is all because in this kind of superficial civilization, compared to a woman, the condition of hapless man becomes reduced to this. And this was not the condition of the Aziz alone, other members of the elite were no different, because the psyche of their women has also been exposed before us, i.e., the general cultural condition of this society had become like this. And then observe to what extent a woman who is spurned in love goes in her desire for vengeance. And thirdly, how a man having become helpless in the hands of women, strangles the throat of his conscience. Aziz and the members of his household had witnessed the signs of Yusuf's truthfulness and chastity of his self, and they knew who was at fault. But despite this they became obliged to carry out the threat of the wife of Aziz. In a society without Allah, this is how haqq and justice are ridiculed. We said at the start that different aspects of the eminence of the character of Yusuf have been displayed in the surah. So far one aspect has appeared prominently before us, i.e., the preservation of chastity. From this it is clear what an extremely precious quality the preservation of chastity is according to the Quran. Other than Yusuf, the Quran has also presented a detailed account of the life of another individual, and she is Maryam, the mother of Jesus. Details of this have been preserved in previous volumes of the meanings of the Quran, see volume 4 in particular. Though she is not a Nabi, the word istafaki has been used for her just like for the Anbiya, 342. What was the reason for her attainment of this lofty stature? She did not allow her chastity to become disinured, 21:91, and it is on the basis of this very attribute that her character has been declared as a model for all the women of the world, 66:12. At the animal level sexual intercourse is related to the process of procreation, but at the human level its status is somewhat different. Regarding this, we had noted in the meanings of the Quran, Volume 1, that even Western thinkers have reached this conclusion after lifelong research, that this has a profound correlation with the rise and fall of nations. We had mentioned there that we will write about this in greater detail at a suitable place. We feel that this place is appropriate for its elaboration. J. D. Unwin of Cambridge University made this question the subject of his research, whether the fulfillment of a sexual urge is merely an individual act which relates to two people, or whether it also has some effect on the civilization and culture of that nation. For this purpose he studied the lives of 80 primitive, ancient, tribes residing in different parts of the world, and then the cultural lives of 16 civilized nations. After that he presented the outcome of his research in his valuable book titled Sex and Culture. It is not known whether Dr. Unwin is still alive or has died, but his immortal book is before us, from which important excerpts are shared here. The first sentence of this book is: among both civilized and uncivilized peoples there is a close relation between sexual opportunity and cultural condition, and I have thought it worthwhile to conduct a detailed inquiry into the matter. The results of my inquiry, and the conclusions I have drawn from the facts, are presented in the following pages. In the preface to the book he has written: briefly stated, my final conclusion is that the cultural behavior, as defined, of any human society depends, first, on the inherent nature of the human organism, and, secondly, on the state of energy into which, as the result of its sexual regulations, the society has arrived. He has noted this principle in the main text of the book in the following words. No matter what kind of geographical environment some group may be living in, the dependence of the state of its cultural life is solely on this matter, what kind of regulations it had established in sexual relations both in the past and the present. Have you noticed to what conclusion this scholar has reached after his research? He has reached the conclusion that sexual relations are not a term for the mere satisfaction of an instinctive emotion, but instead the civilization and culture of nations is dependent on the discipline and management of this emotion. So much so, that Dr. Unwin even writes, if you look at the history of some nation, you see that at some point in time its cultural level had risen or fallen, and it will be found through research that this nation had implemented a change in the regulation of its sexual relations, the consequence of which was the elevation or decline in the cultural status. Further on, he writes that the effects of a change in the regulation of sexual relations manifest after 3 generations, in other words, in approximately 100 years. Thus, if a cultural change occurs in some nation, i.e., it gains cultural ascendancy in the world or suffers a decline, then for the causes of this rise and fall we should look at what kinds of changes this nation had made in the regulations of its sexual relations 100 years previously. Whatever those kinds of changes are, the same kinds of consequences will be established. 1.9 Compulsory celibacy. First of all, consider the life of celibacy, and the ideology of monasticism influenced by it, which Christianity declares as the first condition for spiritual evolution. Dr. Unwin's analysis about this is: the effects of compulsory celibacy are devastating on human culture. The meaning of compulsory celibacy is that it should become included in human beliefs or social norms that a life of celibacy is a cause for eminence and holiness. And in this way compel people mentally that they should live their life as celibates, just as in Christianity nuns are compelled to live this kind of life. In the doctrine of Christianity or monasticism, where it is said that only a life of celibacy is a cause for human dignity, it is, on the other hand, generally stated nowadays that in connection with the satisfaction of sexual urges, if any kind of restriction is imposed, then this has a very detrimental influence on human nerves and dangerous kinds of diseases take birth from this. Dr. Unwin's analysis is that this belief is wrong. Neurological disorders are not created as a result of imposing restrictions on sexual urges. In fact, this actually occurs by leaving these unrestricted. Further on he writes that nations which leave their men and women free to fulfill their sexual urges in whatever way they like, the energies of intellect and action in them become depleted. So it was that the Romans did the same. They used to satisfy their sexual urges like animals without any restriction, the outcome of which was that they were left with no energy to perform other tasks. Dr. Freud, a renowned psychologist of our time, states the reason for this. When some restrictions are placed on sexual urges, these turn their direction to another direction which is called sublimation, and that is why the excess energy of people having turned away from sexual aspects directs itself towards those aspects which are culturally extremely valuable. Contrary to this, what is the end of the nation which leaves the satisfaction of sexual desires unchecked? About this Dr. Unwin writes, this nation certainly has the power of knowledge and intellect, but it does not seek guidance from this in their affairs. They never investigate the cause of events. Whatever happens they carry on accepting it as it is. For all matters of life, they have a well-established opinion, according to which they keep living. Every unusual event which they do not understand, they link it with some strange force. The manifestation of this force is sometimes believed to be stones, and sometimes trees, sometimes such animals which they view as baffling, and sometimes other such things whose nature they cannot comprehend. If they see anything extraordinary in the birth or life of some person, they assume that he is the master of this force. So much so, that even after his death they think that he is the possessor of this force. After this, Dr. Unwin has detailed all those superstitions which manifest in the shape of amulets, offerings, magic, spells, ancestor worship, reverence of graves of such a people. After this he writes, these kinds of beliefs continue generation after generation in this nation, the changes of the era have no effect on them in any way. In this society human beings are born, fulfill their own desires, and die, their corpses are buried in the ground, and they become forgotten as if they never existed. They are not human beings but are animals. This is the outcome of the research of a non-Muslim Western scholar. From this you can deduce how deeply the satisfaction of the sexual urge is connected with the life and death of a nation, and what the purpose and objective is of the level of restrictions which the Quran has defined for this. The younger section among us, in the footsteps of the West, commonly state that the satisfaction of the sexual urge is a demand of nature, whatever way it is accomplished is legitimate. The constraints which are placed on it are the requirements of society. If society thinks it appropriate, then it can relax these, or it can eliminate these totally. What objection can anyone have about this? The objection can be the one which a scholar from among the Western nations has determined after lifelong research. These restrictions are related to the rise and fall of a nation. It will, in fact, become clear from this why the Quran has placed so much importance on this incident in the story of Yusuf, and why this has been declared to be a reason for instruction and admonition for us. Let us now move forward. The organizer and administrator of the palaces and one accustomed to the life of comfort and luxury there, Yusuf is now enduring the hardships of prison. And for this crime, that on the occasion of the means and opportunities for provocation of the emotions, why did he follow the supreme ethical value which was defined by Allah? Yusuf's purity, righteous character, and piety were not something which were hidden and secret. He had spent part of his life in the same place where he was now imprisoned. This is why there was also respect and esteem for him within the prison. In the prison there were another 2 young men with him, one of them was the drinks manager to the king and the other was the head chef of the king. They had fallen out of favor in some matter and were thus thrown into prison. 1.10 Dreams of the companions in the prison. One night they visualized dreams, and because the wisdom and maturity of Yusuf was already well known, they went to him to determine the interpretation of their dreams. Together with Yusuf, 2 other young men also arrived in the prison. One day, one of them said that I have seen in a dream that I am pressing grapes to make wine. The other one said that I see that I am carrying bread on my head and birds are eating it, by pecking at it. Tell us, what is the meaning and conclusion of this, because you appear to be a very wise and righteous man. 1236. From whatever Yusuf was seeing and hearing about these prisoners in the prison, it was not at all difficult to evaluate their dreams. Hence, he considered this to be a useful opportunity. Due to their need, those young men were especially attentive towards Yusuf. Yusuf thought to put one principle about true deen into their ears. It is possible they may convey it to the king. But in order to influence them further psychologically, he considered it necessary to keep them waiting for a little while longer. Just as a messenger of divine messages does not let any opportunity slip from his hand for this purpose. Yusuf thought that these young men are fully attentive at this time to listen to him. Therefore the voice of Tawheed should be put into their ears, so he said to them that I will tell you the interpretation of your dreams before your meal time, but first, at least hear who I am and what my message is. Whatever I say is not from myself, rather I say it based on that knowledge which I have received from my Rabb. First of all, hear this, that I am not on the path of those who neither accept Allah nor have assurance in the hereafter. You may have heard the names of Ibrahim, Ishaq, and Yaqub. I am from among their progeny and follow their path. We do not associate anyone with Allah. Finding this reality, that no one is to be included in the sovereignty of Allah, is a great blessing of Allah which He has bestowed on us as well as on other people, who follow this path. But many do not recognize the value of this supreme blessing of His. 1237-38. 1.11 Address by Yusuf. After introducing his perspective and way of thinking in this way, he explained what it means to not associate others with Allah, and in this he declared the supreme reality of the divine deen, which is the fundamental principle of Islam. He stated, I will explain to you about this point in Tawheed in another way. An individual is the servant of just one master, and that master is also such that he possesses all kinds of authorities, and another individual is in the service of many masters at the one time. You tell me, whose life will be lived better? It is obvious that the life of the individual who is the servant of one master who continues to fulfill all of his needs will be better. 1239. Indeed, this is the very condition of those who adopt obedience to one Allah, and in contrast to them is that of those who accept different masters as their God. You people bow down before different gods. Have you ever paid attention to the reality and truth of these gods? It is merely that these are a few names which you and your forefathers have given, otherwise they possess no reality and status of their own. You are told that these represent Allah. This is also false. Allah has sent no seal of approval for them, that He has given them some authority. Remember, Allah is the sole possessor of power and authority. Other than Him no one has the right to govern. His command is that do not adopt the authority and obedience of anyone else. This is the established and balanced map for life, but most people do not know this truth. 1240. What is Islam? The practical summary of these concise sentences from the address by Yusuf. We can say that the whole of the Quran is an explication of this summary. It is said that when Shah Jahan was imprisoned in the Agra fort, he requested a diamond crafting expert that he should insert a small diamond in the wall of his room in such a way that wherever he is in the room, sitting or standing, the whole crown should remain in front of his eyes. Just look at these little diamonds in the address by Yusuf, how in each and every single diamond the complete crown is seen glittering. Are many gods differing among themselves better, or Allah, the One, Supreme and Irresistible? 1239. The whole universe of Tawheed is embodied within this diamond. Man only bows before the one whom he considers, in his own mind, to be a conferrer of sustenance, about whom he thinks that he can provide him with some benefit, or can convey some harm. Just reflect that in this domain of inventing gods, how many he has to bow to in the world, and on how many doorsteps he has to smear his forehead with their humiliating dust. There is a famous phrase that one person cannot please two masters at the same time. From this, just imagine the state of that practical mushrik who has to bow his head at the iron doorstep of his new master for his every need, and then the irony is that not one among them has that power due to the perception of which he prostrates before them. So when some human being does not even have control over rububiyyat, then why should a man adopt slavery to another man? Sovereignty only belongs to that being according to whose law the decision of profit and loss is made. Hence, hear this, in il hukmo illa lillah, that it is his command, do not follow any other law except his. This is that established deen in obedience of which man should function. So much has been written in previous volumes on shirk and Tawheed, the rule of Allah, obedience, Islamic state, the Quranic system of government, that there is no need felt for any further expansion on this. From these volumes the explanations of the address of Yusuf will radiate in their full glory. After this sermon Yusuf said to them, now hear the interpretation of your dreams. One of you, who is pressing grapes, will serve drinks to his master, and the second one will be hanged on the gallows where birds will peck at his head with their beaks. This is the interpretation of the dreams about which you inquired. Not only an interpretation, just view this as absolutely decreed, this is my evaluation. 1241. Yusuf said to the one about whom he thought would be released from the hardships, find an opportunity to mention to the king those matters about which I have told you, i.e., the oneness of Allah and about the sovereignty of Allah. However, these matters could only be effective in the event that the king learns that this prisoner is innocent, otherwise, who lends an ear to the advice and suggestions of an imprisoned criminal? Therefore, he would likely also have asked him to inform the king about the reality of my imprisonment. Both these young men were taken out from the prison, and both met their fates according to the interpretations laid out by Yusuf. But the young man who was restored to his job forgot the matter of Yusuf, and thus, the one among them about whom Yusuf had assessed that he will be released, he told him that when you go to your master, Rab, do mention to him those things which I have told you. Hence, he was released from the prison, but Shaitan made him forget to mention these things to his master. Many years passed thus in this matter, and Yusuf remained in the prison. 1242. 1.12 Dream of the King. Time continued to pass until one night the king visualized a strange and perplexing dream, the interpretation of which the wise men of the court were unable to give. One night the king saw in a dream that there are 7 fat cows which are being devoured by 7 thin cows, and 7 ears of corn are green and 7 are dried up. He narrated his dream to his courtiers, and said to them that if you can interpret dreams, then tell me what is the meaning of my dream. They replied that this is not a dream, but merely a distressed thought, and we do not know the interpretations of such kinds of distressed thoughts. 12:43-44. When this matter became spread among the wider court, the head of the bar staff remembered his dream in the prison and the interpretation given by Yusuf and the truth of this interpretation. The one from among the 2 prisoners who had been released remembered Yusuf, in connection with this dream, after a period of time. He said, "Let me go to the prison, I will let you know the interpretation of this dream." 12:45. Consequently, he hastened and reached Yusuf. He came to the prison and said to Yusuf, "That O you who gives correct interpretations. Tell us the interpretation of this dream that there are 7 fat cows which are being devoured by 7 thin cows, and there are 7 green ears of corn and 7 dry ones. I will make the interpretation of this reach those people, who have sent me here for this purpose, from this they will recognize your worth and value." 12:46. Just reflect that this is that same young man to whom Yusuf had given the glad tidings of his release and had emphasized that he should mention him to the king. But not only did he forget to mention him to the king, he did not even return to him to express his gratitude, and now when he was in need, then he remembered Yusuf. If it had been an ordinary human being, then first of all he would have complained about all these matters, and due to the importance of the matter before him would have said, "Why should I tell you the interpretation of this? If the king needs to know, then he should take me out of here, I will tell him myself." But then this is the essential difference in the profound insight and magnanimity of the devoted men of Allah and an ordinary individual. Not only did Yusuf not relay any kinds of complaints to him, he neither wished to take any advantage of this opportunity, he told him the meaning, and together with this meaning the solution also. Yusuf, without saying a word of complaint that you did not fulfill your promise, said to him, "That I will tell you the interpretation of this dream and also that solution through which your country will be saved from the impending devastation. So listen, you people should farm and cultivate with great hard work for 7 years, and when you harvest the crop, then except for that grain which you need for your daily food, leave the remainder of the grain in its sheath, so that it remains preserved from infestation. After this there will come 7 such years which will be of great hardship, due to drought. During this time of drought, all that grain which you will have stored will become of use to you. You must save a certain amount from this, which can be used for seeding, because in the following year there will be abundant rain, plentiful grain will be produced, and also grapes, whose juice people will press." 12:47-49. When the king heard the interpretation and together with it the beautiful solution, the potentials of the wisdom and vision, intellect and acumen of Yusuf became evident to him, and he immediately issued an order that this individual should be released from the prison and brought to the court. So the envoy of the king came to Yusuf with the release order. At this point another glowing aspect of the character of Yusuf becomes a reason to delight the heart and vision. Until the Quran informs us, you cannot even imagine what reply he would have given to the envoy. Because after this, what reply could there possibly be? The presumption can only be that Yusuf will have viewed it to be a blessing to be released from the prison and its hardships, and would have immediately gone with him to the court of the king. 1.13 Another glimpse of the character of Yusuf. Every person would have done the same thing at this opportune moment, but the one in whose self such a degree of awakening and in whose character so much loftiness has been created will not do this. Instead, he will do something different from this. Yusuf replied that, "Thank you to the king for his attention. But I do not want to come out of the prison based on the charitable mercy of someone. Go and tell the king to first investigate my case, and when it is proven that I am innocent, then he can send the order for my release. My aim is not to relieve myself of the hardships of imprisonment and confinement, but is to prove my innocence." When that person communicated this interpretation and solution to the king, he was taken aback and, he ordered that this prisoner be brought to him, who has given this interpretation and solution. When the envoy of the king came to Yusuf and told him to come out of the prison, Yusuf said, "I do not wish to leave the prison in this way on the basis of charitable mercy. Go to your master and say to him, that he should first of all have my case investigated from the beginning, so that, this should be made clear what were the circumstances of the cutting of hands by the women, and how great a snare it was which was used to entrap me. At this moment in time the knowledge of this fact is only with my Allah, but after investigation of the case it will become common knowledge as to who was at fault. If I am proven innocent in this way, then I will come out of the prison." 1250. Allahu Akbar. Of what a great character is this demonstration, but there is no mention of this in the Torah, in which it is noted only that Yusuf changed his clothes and immediately went to the king's court. And Pharaoh proceeded to send and to call Joseph that they might bring him quickly from the prison hole. Hence, he shaved and changed his mantles and went before Pharaoh. Genesis 41:14. 1.141 Hadith prevalent among us. Having reached this point, a hadith which is prevalent amongst us also comes to mind. Regarding the Torah, we are certain that it has been tampered with, but the sad state is that even greater than this is found in those books of ours which are claimed to be authentic books. It is quoted in Bukhari that Rasool said that as soon as the envoy from the king arrived, if I had been in the place of Yusuf then I would have immediately gone with him. If I had remained in the prison for as long as Yusuf had, then I would have gone with the envoy. It can be clearly seen that these kind of a hadith are a result of the concoctions of the opponents of Islam, Jews and Christians, who wished to present the eminent character of Rasulullah as being inferior to the Anbiya of Bani Israel. But the grievance is not about them, it is about our own people that they wander about holding these kinds of narrations clasped to their bosoms. And if consideration of the eminence and distinction of Rasulullah obliges someone on this that he does not dare to ascribe these to Rasulullah, then fatwas of kufr and denial are issued on him. And all of this is because these narrations are noted in the books of Bukhari and Muslim. In other words, if there is an insult against the eminent status of Rasulullah, Allah forbid, then that is of no consequence, but no thought should arise of the possibility of there being false narratives in Bukhari and Muslim. Whereas this matter is not concealed from those eyes that see the truth, that there is nothing free from error under the heavens excepting the Book of Allah. And this is the established deen, but most men know not. 1240. 1.15 Investigation of the incident. The king had already become impressed with the wisdom and vision of Yusuf. When he heard this reply of his, respect for the eminent character of Yusuf also entered his heart. He immediately gave the order for an investigation and asked those women to state what is the truth of the matter. The king investigated this case himself, and said to those women, "State truthfully that when you desired to divert Yusuf from his intent, then what occurred at that time?" They said, "Hasha lillah, Allah preserve us. We did not see anything evil in Yusuf, he is completely innocent." 1251. As has been written already, it becomes clear from this that these women had also attempted to lure Yusuf towards themselves and that all the excuses and tricks of the dinner gathering were for this purpose only. And after this the sending of Yusuf to prison was also a link in the trap of ensnarement laid by them which was devised on behalf of the wife of the Aziz. Here, this point is also worthy of note that Yusuf did not utter the name of the wife of the Aziz, only pointed to these women. 1250. This is because in the incident of the ripping of the shirt, the Aziz had asked Yusuf to consider this matter as being closed. Yusuf still had that consideration in mind, so he respected the request of his patron and did not feel it appropriate to mention the name of his wife. But when the case of the women was investigated, then everything became unveiled. During this time the stormy emotions of the wife of the Aziz had also settled down, and she had become convinced of the loftiness of the character of Yusuf. Though the emotions of vengeance may be 1,000-fold, an eminent character never remains without its influence. 1.16 The unveiling of the truth. When the other women took an oath regarding the chaste character of Yusuf, she, too, could no longer remain silent and openly declared that, leaving aside their case, even in my case Yusuf was not at fault in any way. On hearing this, the wife of Aziz also became forced to speak, and with lowered gaze and trembling lips she said, "Now that the truth has become disclosed in this way, I should accept that it was indeed myself who desired to lure Yusuf. Undoubtedly, Yusuf is completely truthful in his statement." 1251. At this, Yusuf said that I also emphasized on the re-investigation of this case so that my patron and benefactor, the Aziz, may know that I did not go behind his back and betray his trust, and that the law of requital of Allah never allows those who betray trust to succeed. The betrayal of trust was by his wife, and she stands before us empty-handed and unsuccessful, whereas I was trustworthy, and ultimately success was my share alone. 1252. Then the wife of the Aziz, continuing her statement, said. The wife of Aziz continued her account and stated that I do not claim to be innocent, my nafs had misguided me. The reality is that the hedonistic desires of man provoke him towards evil, only that person can remain protected from this on whom is the mercy of Allah. Only He is the one who gives protection and provides remat against these kinds of errors. 1253. Who could not have had sentiments of respect and loftiness awakened in his heart from this display of the eminence of the character of Yusuf? Along with wisdom and vision, foresight and sound judgment, such elevated conduct and such strength of character, the discerning and astute eyes of the king immediately recognized the potential of this accomplished being. The king, after coming to know the true state of affairs, said, "Bring Yusuf to me, I wish to accord him a special position close to me by elevating him above others, he will be my closest advisor." Hence, when the king spoke to Yusuf, then his other attributes also became manifested to him. He said, "From today you have acquired the status of the possessor of great respect and competence in our eyes. Your trustworthiness and integrity have been proven." 1254. Allahu Akbar. A shepherd from Canaan, a slave sold in the marketplace of Egypt, a prisoner for years, and the addressee of these words from the king. Today, surely, you are before our own presence, with rank firmly established and fidelity fully proved. 1254. Yusuf cast an eye over the different departments of administration and logistics of the state, and assessed which department he should retain in his own hands, through which the remainder of the arrangements will then proceed in the correct direction. Yusuf said to the king that, the secret of the prosperity of the nation of Egypt lies concealed in the riches of its land. Place the responsibility of these treasures, the produce of the land and economic affairs, in my control. I will protect these because I know how this is done. 1255. Just reflect that when Yusuf had arrived in the palaces of the Aziz and the administration and organization of that place was placed in his control, Allah had declared, "The individual who bought Yusuf and brought him to his house told his wife that, do not treat him as with ordinary slaves, but instead, keep him with respect, because from his appearance and conduct he appears to be a boy from some good background, hence, it is possible that he may become a cause for some benefit for us, or we may even adopt him as a son." In this way we established Yusuf in the land of Egypt, and made such an arrangement that he should receive a good education and training, and that he acquires the ability to understand matters and to draw the correct conclusions from events. Allah ensures the success of his schemes, but most people do not understand, that how and why is this taking place. 1221. This means that the objective of this tamakan, establishment in the land, was that Yusuf be provided with opportunities for the comprehension and balanced planning and execution of affairs. The outcome of this practical training was that now Yusuf became capable of managing such a vast organization. Having reached to this point, it is stated, "In this way we made Yusuf the holder of authority in the state of Egypt, such a holder of authority that he could run the organization and administration in whichever way he wanted. We bestow people with Remat according to our law of Mashiat, and that law of Mashiat is that we do not let the efforts of whichever person lives life in a balanced and righteous way to go to waste, he will ultimately receive its reward." 1256. Tamakan fil ard, and such a tamakan, established power, that there is no one to interfere in your authority, wherever you wish you can exert your authority. What greater reward can there be in the world for righteous deeds and purified intellect and vision? As far as the destination after this world is concerned, what can one say about the elevated statures and ranks there? The pleasant outcomes of balanced conduct in this life do not remain confined to this world only, these also continue to be an accompaniment in the life of the hereafter. And there the state of these is even better than the bounties of this world. Those people who maintain conviction in the truth of the laws of Allah, and by remaining protected from the destructive path live life according to these laws, achieve all these triumphs. 1257. We have already seen that Yusuf had taken the administration of the affairs of the land into his own hands, and he had figured out that the country is likely going to face the risk of famine. What measures he adopted in relation to its prevention, in fact, in relation to the economic system of the state, are not mentioned in the Quran, though there are details given in the Torah about this. These details cannot be considered as being authentic as there has been tampering in the Torah, but from whatever has been referred to in it regarding the administration of the land, one can assess what kinds of measures Yusuf may have adopted in this respect. 1.16 Yusuf's administration. In Genesis 47:13-26, it is noted, "Now there was no bread in all the land because the famine was very severe, and the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan became exhausted as a result of famine. And Joseph went on picking up all the money that was to be found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the cereals which people were buying, and Joseph kept bringing the money into Pharaoh's house. In time the money from the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan was spent. And all the Egyptians began coming to Joseph saying, 'Give us bread, for why should we die in front of you because money has run out?' Then Joseph said, 'Hand over your livestock and I shall give you bread in exchange for your livestock. If money has run out.' And they began bringing their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph kept giving them bread in exchange for their horses and livestock of the flock and the livestock of the herd and asses, and he kept providing them with bread in exchange for all their livestock during that year. Gradually that year came to its close, and they began coming to him in the next year and saying to him, 'We shall not hide it from my lord, but the money and the stock of domestic animals have been spent to my lord. There remains naught left before my lord, but our bodies and our land. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we together with our land will become slaves to Pharaoh, and give us seed that we may live and not die and our land not be desolate.' So Joseph bought all the land of the Egyptians for Pharaoh, because the Egyptians sold each one his field, for famine had a strong grip on them, and the land came to be Pharaoh's. As for the people, he removed them into cities from one end of the territory of Egypt to its other end. Only the land of the priests he did not buy, because the rations for priests were from Pharaoh and they ate their rations that Pharaoh gave them. That is why they did not sell their land. Then Joseph said to the people, 'See, I have today bought you and your land for Pharaoh. Here is seed for you and you must sow the land with it. When it has resulted in produce, then you must give a fifth to Pharaoh, but 4 parts will become yours as seed for the field and as food for you and for those who are in your houses and for your little ones to eat.' Consequently, they said, 'You have preserved our lives. Let us find favor in the eyes of my lord, and we will become slaves to Pharaoh.' And Joseph proceeded to make it a decree down to this day over the landed estate of Egypt for Pharaoh to have to the amount of a fifth. Only the land of the priests as a distinct group did not become Pharaoh's. From the excerpt above it is apparent that when Yusuf analyzed the cause of the malady, he saw that the reason for the economic chaos in the country was that control of the land was in the hands of big landlords. He created such conditions as a result of which those landlords were forced to sell their lands into the hands of the government. In this way all the agricultural lands, coming out of individual ownership, came into the ownership of the government. After this Yusuf distributed this land among the farmers and provided them with facilities so that they could cultivate it themselves. Now these farmers were the owners of their own hard work and landlords were no longer shareholders in the hard work of the farmers. After this a famine arose and people from the surrounding areas of Egypt also started to arrive to obtain grains from this central source. When the tribe of Yaqub also became caught up in this problem, the brothers of Yusuf came to seek grain. Yusuf recognized them, but since the thought that Yusuf could be appointed to such a high stature could not possibly have even remotely entered their minds, hence they did not recognize him. In this way many years passed, and after this a famine descended on the country and consequently people from far and wide began to arrive in the capital to obtain grain. In this process, the brothers of Yusuf also came. Yusuf recognized them but they were not able to recognize him, this is because it could never have even remotely entered their minds that Yusuf could be the holder of this status. 1258. It is obvious that Yusuf would have inquired from them in great detail about the state of affairs of their household and in this way, while making conversation, he would have got them to disclose that they also have a half-brother who lives with their father. Therefore, when they were about to leave, Yusuf told them to bring their half-brother, Binyamin, when they next returned. When Yusuf had got grain etc. loaded up for them, then as they were leaving, he told them that when you next return, bring this brother of yours with you, about whom you have said, that he is your brother from your father's side. You have seen that. I am not a harsh official who will do an injustice to someone, I give full measure and also host those who come from outside well, hence, your father about whom you have expressed a fear that he will not be agreeable to sending your brother with you need not feel any danger in sending him here. If you do not bring him to me then you will neither get grain nor will you have access to me. 12:59-60. They replied. They said, we will try our best that our father revises his decision and we are sure that we will succeed in this matter, and bringing our brother with us, we will present ourselves before you. 12:61. In order to ensure the likelihood of their coming back, Yusuf also had their payment put in their sacks. Yusuf told his men that the money with which they have purchased the grain from my side, put it in their sacks in such a way that when they reach home and open their load, this money should appear before them, and they recognize that it is their own money and in this way they return to obtain grain. 12:62. On arriving home, they explained to Yaqub the condition declared by the Amir of Egypt, i.e. Yusuf. Consequently, when they returned and went to their father, they, after narrating other events, said that we have been told that you will only be given grain again if you also bring your brother with you, if this is not done, then never mind the grain, you will not be able to come anywhere near me. Hence, send our brother with us so that we can bring back grain. And we give you assurance that we will fully protect him. 12:63. On hearing this Yaqub replied. Upon this, he, Yaqub, said, what, should I also trust you in his case just as previously I had trusted you regarding his brother, Yusuf? That is why, I cannot place him in your protection, he will remain in the protection of Allah, because he is the best to protect and provides the best of provisions. 12:64. After this, when they opened their load they found their money sitting there, upon which, according to Yusuf's expectation, they began to insist again with their father. So when they opened their load, they saw that together with the grain, their payment has also been returned. Upon this they said to their father, what more do we need than this, that we obtain grain and also get our money back? Now just think that if we cannot go back to obtain grain merely because you do not wish to allow our brother to go with us, what a great loss this will be. Therefore, give us permission that we can take him with us and bring back grain for our household. We will give him full protection and, from this we will also have the benefit of his share, bring back an additional camel load with us. The grain which we have brought is very meager, it will soon finish. 12:65. Finally, Yaqub obtained a commitment from them in the name of Allah that they will bring Binyamin back safely, and after that he gave permission for him to go. The father said that, "Since you are now pressuring me like this, I will therefore send him with you, but on this condition that, you make a commitment by keeping Allah between us that you will definitely bring him back to me, excepting that you are yourselves somehow encircled, and become totally helpless in this way." When they had given a commitment for this, he said that Allah is a guardian on our discussion and the agreement which we have made. 12:66. It is stated in the Torah that when the brothers of Yusuf had gone to Egypt the first time, they had been subjected to a suspicion of spying. There was an apprehension lingering in the heart of Yaqub that possibly this kind of suspicion may arise again about them, and they may become rounded up, and together with them, Binyamin may also end up in trouble. That is why he told them as a precaution that when you enter Egypt, do not do so as one big group, rather enter the city through different gates. When they were about to leave, the father said to them, that, "Look, sons, when you enter that city, do not all of you enter together through one gate, enter from different gates. If you all enter together, then seeing a party of strangers, the eyes of the citizens will unnecessarily be upon you." Together with this he also stated that this is just a thought which has entered my heart, due to which I have told you to take care. Do not think from this that after this you will be secure from every danger, and you will not need to take any further precautions. This cautionary measure of mine ought not to make you ignore anything which, according to time and situation, you should observe of the law of Allah. Remember, peace and danger, profit and loss, all occur according to the law of Allah, other than that no one else has this authority. My trust is also in him, and you, too, should have trust in him alone, and not only myself and yourselves. Everyone who wishes to trust should place his trust in him. 12:67. After this it is stated, consequently, the caravan of these brothers entered the city in the same manner that the father had advised. But, as will become evident a little later, this measure could not prevent that incident which was about to take place here according to the law of Allah, and according to which Binyamin was to be held back here. This cautionary measure was merely the outcome of a thought which took birth in the heart of Yaqub, and the uneasiness from which he had resolved in this way. This thought was also based on knowledge and wisdom, it was not a mere superstition. This is because we had bestowed Yaqub with knowledge and foresight. That knowledge and foresight which most people remain without. 12:68. When this caravan reached Yusuf, he informed his brother, Binyamin, that I am your brother, so do not grieve. When this party reached Yusuf, he had his brother stay with him, and told him that I am your brother, Yusuf, and along with this he also emphasized, do not be sorrowful about whatever our other brothers did to me. 12:69. Yusuf may have wished with all the intensity of his heart that Binyamin could stay behind with him, but this could not occur unless he was either held back without reason, or he disclosed the secret to his brothers about who he was. The first option was impossible because the law of the land did not permit this, and the use of force was inconceivable for the character of Yusuf. On the other hand, the time was not yet right for the disclosure of the secret to the brothers. Therefore, he was forced with a heavy heart to say goodbye to his brother along with them. Yusuf provided the means for their return. When this load was being made ready for the journey, one of the brothers stealthily placed Yusuf's royal goblet in Binyamin's sack. The intention may have been that if no one sees it, then the goblet will reach home, and if it is detected, then Binyamin will be discredited and his status will diminish in the eyes of his father. After this the caravan set off on its journey. When the attendants of the palaces checked the various items, they could not find the royal goblet there. Because the caravan from Canaan had stayed there, hence their suspicion was inevitably cast on them. They chased after them and called out to them to halt, and inquired whether they had taken the goblet. When Yusuf had their load made ready, for the return, then, one of the brothers, put the royal goblet in the sack of Binyamin. If not discovered, then the goblet will reach home, and if discovered, then Binyamin will get a bad name. When Yusuf's men found the goblet missing after they had departed, one among them, cried out, "O people of the caravan! Halt, you are thieves." 12:75, 12:83, 12:89. They turned towards the men of Yusuf and said, "What is it that is missing of yours, for which you are calling us thieves?" They replied that the royal goblet has gone missing. Whoever finds it will receive the reward of a camel load. The leader of these men declared that, "I give assurance of this, that this reward will certainly be given." 12:70-72. The evidence for what we have mentioned here about one of the brothers of Yusuf having stowed this goblet in the sack of Binyamin is that later when Yusuf disclosed to his brothers about himself that he is Yusuf, he confronted them, saying, "Do you know what you did to Yusuf and to his brother?" 12:89. What they had done particularly to Binyamin is not mentioned anywhere in this account apart from at this place. From this it can be deduced that this goblet was stowed in the sack of Binyamin by one from among these brothers, and this was that intrigue to which Yusuf had referred. In any case, the royal officials started to interrogate them, and they began to take oaths that they were not thieves. "We have already come here once before, you had seen that we did not create any kind of trouble." The brothers of Yusuf said that Allah is a witness that we did not come here to create some kind of mischief or to break a law. We have come here before as well, therefore, you are acquainted with us, that we do not have any such kind of intention. Be assured. We are not thieves. 12:73. The royal officials said, "Very well, that may be so, but tell us that if the goblet is discovered in your possession following a search, then what should be the punishment?" The royal officials said that if you turn out to be liars, then what should be its punishment? 12:74. They replied that the punishment is clear. In recompense of his crime, whoever is a thief will himself become the punishment, i.e., he will be detained. They said that this is the tradition among us. The one among them who knew in whose bag the goblet was, 12:70, said that in whoever's sack the goblet is discovered, he should be detained in retaliation for this. This is the manner according to which we punish criminals. 12:75. Consequently, the leader of the men, who had initially declared that whoever finds the goblet will be given a reward and I guarantee this, began the search and the goblet was found in the sack of Binyamin. Then the royal officials began to search the sacks. And firstly, checked the sacks of the other brothers, and the goblet was not found in these. Finally, the sack of Yusuf's brother was examined and the goblet was discovered. 12:76. Just consider what has occurred up until now. Yusuf wished to retain his brother, Binyamin, with himself but, because of the reasons that have already been stated, he could not do this. One of the brothers of Yusuf placed the goblet in the bag of Binyamin, either to obtain the goblet, or with a desire to discredit Binyamin. When a search was conducted for the goblet, the brothers of Yusuf themselves declared that whoever is found with the goblet will be held responsible, and in order to face his punishment will remain behind. The goblet was discovered in the sack of Binyamin, and in this way, the situation arose for him to remain behind. There is nothing even implied or hinted at in the Quran that Yusuf had any hand whatsoever in the concealment and discovery of the goblet, or that it had been his scheme. But those whose aim is to insult the Anbiya manage to concoct such tales. In the Torah, Genesis 44:1-2, it is stated that Yusuf himself had the goblet stowed in the sack of Binyamin, and when the caravan had departed, then he himself sent his men in pursuit in order to search them and apprehend the thief and bring him back. But why reproach the Torah, which is in any case tampered with, and why complain about the Jews, since they attribute such concocted tales about their own anbiya at the very thought of which even one's eyes sink into the ground with shame. The sorrow is over our own mufassirin, writers of tafsir, that in this respect they are no better than the Jews. The tafsir Ibn Kathir is held up as an authentic tafsir among us. In connection with this incident, it says firstly that Yusuf had told Binyamin earlier that, "I am trying that I can somehow or other retain you behind with myself." In explanation of this effort it is written that, when he began to give a camel load each to his brothers according to the protocol, and started loading their goods, he gave a secret signal to his wily workers that the royal goblet of silver is to be stowed secretly among the goods of Binyamin, so his workers deftly placed that chalice in the sack of his brother, Binyamin. After this it is described how the goblet was caused to be exposed from the sack of Binyamin, and he was held back, and the commentary about this is as follows. This was that procedure which Allah with His wisdom had taught Yusuf for the succor of Yusuf and Binyamin. Just note that according to the tafsir of these people, Allah forbid, teaches His Nabi by proposing a subterfuge, and by acting on this, the Nabi achieves his aim. After this, these people state that Allah elevates the grades of those whom He wishes. Allah forbid. This is an example of the comprehension of Islam by the renowned mufassirin. They have neither any consciousness of the grandeur of Allah, nor any estimation of the purity of the anbiya, nor do they have any knowledge of the divine values or any grasp of the universal code of ethics. But the complaint is not about them, that the level of their knowledge and intellect was only this. Instead, inquire from those people who go around with these tafsir clasped to their bosoms and carried high on their heads. Not only do they read these, but they also teach them, and according to this teaching they are declared as being Allama. As far as Yusuf is concerned, the Quran has provided evidence of his great stature in 4 words. It states, Narfa'u darajatin man nasha'u. In this way, according to our law of Mashiat we bestow loftiness in stature, 12:76. It is clear from this that from whatever actions Yusuf had taken, his ranks had become elevated as a result. If an attempt is made to comprehend the incident by bearing this fundamental reality in mind, then the matter becomes clear. Yusuf wished to keep Binyamin with him. The law of the state was an impediment in his way. If he had broken the law, openly or secretly, then he would have fallen from this elevated rank of his to which he had been appointed in the state. If he had accomplished his wish using a deceptive tactic, then leaving aside the rules of the state, his value would also have diminished in the divine balance. The Quran has stated that he employed self-control, he did not take any such step to fulfill his wish as a consequence of which he could have fallen from his lofty stature. Due to this discipline of the self, the eminence of his character was further enhanced. The law of Mashiat of Allah is such that the stature of whoever observes the discipline defined by Allah becomes elevated, Narfa'u darajatin man nasha'u. Regarding whatever happened without Yusuf's intention or practical intervention, Allah has stated Kazalika kidna la Yusufa, 12:76. This is translated as and in this way we, i.e. Allah, created a route for Yusuf, and from this it is claimed that all this was done, Allah forbid, by Allah. To say such a thing as this is a demonstration of ignorance about the style of explanation of the Quran. There are numerous such places in the Quran in which Allah has related some action, or matter, to Himself, but from which it does not mean that Allah Himself did such a thing. Let us look at a few examples. 1. We teach children to speak. But it is stated in the Quran that Allah created man and taught him to speak, 55:3-4. Similarly, we teach children, and even illiterate adults, to write, but it is stated by Allah that Allah is He who taught man, to write, with a pen, 96:4. It is obvious that the meaning of these verses is that Allah has placed the potential for speech and penmanship in man. To make use, or not to make use, of these potentials is a matter for man himself. Allah has neither taught anyone to speak or to write. 2. In Surah Al-Baqarah it is stated that when a scribe is asked to write a document, then the scribe should not refuse to do this but should write this document in the way that Allah has taught him. 2:282. Obviously from this it also means that ability to write which Allah has made available within man. He himself does not teach a scribe to write. 3. In Surah Al-Ma'idah it is stated about hunting animals, whatever Allah has taught you, you train the hunting animals according to that. 5:4. Obviously, Allah does not teach the hunters about how they should train hunting animals. 4. In Surah Yasin it is stated, and this matter is also a sign for them to understand reality, that we cause their children to ride in a full boat. 36:41, even though they climb into the boat themselves, or their elders help them to do this. To act in accordance with the law of nature, has Allah not attributed this to himself? 5. Allah has created various kinds of means and resources for human needs which man brings into use according to his choice. But Allah also relates this to himself, e.g. in Surah Nahl, 16:80, it is said Allah has made your houses as abodes of peace. After that it is stated Allah has made houses for you with the hides of animals. 6. One point should be understood as a principle that it is an immutable law of Allah that any individual who ingests poison, beyond a particular quantity, will die. Sometimes he says that any individual who takes poison will be killed, and in some places that we kill the one ingesting poison. A well-known verse is Allah has put a seal on their hearts, 2:7, and this same reality is explained at another place in these words, whatever they do, it becomes as rust and covers their hearts, 83:14, and this is how a seal is applied to their hearts. For further details about these verses refer to previous volumes under the topic of taqdeer. From the above examples it is clear that when Allah attributes some act to himself, then it does not necessarily mean that he himself has performed this task, all that is done by man himself. Sometimes according to the natural law, sometimes according to those abilities which have been bestowed to man, and sometimes by making use of those means and resources which are essential for that task. In light of these facts this matter will become comprehensible that when Allah stated in 12:76, that Kazalika kidna la Yusufa, by this it does not mean that Allah himself had devised this, the scheme of the goblet. The meaning of this is that such means and ways became created according to which the wish of Yusuf became accomplished and there was no aspersion cast on him either. The meaning of this verse will be as follows. Then the royal workers began the search of the sacks. First, they looked at the sacks of the other brothers, and the goblet was not found there. Finally, they searched the sack of the brother of Yusuf and the goblet was discovered in it. See from where the matter started and where it ended. With what intention this half-brother had stowed this goblet in the sack of Binyamin, but this act of his became the cause for Yusuf to hold Binyamin back to stay with him. In this way we created a way for Yusuf to retain Binyamin, otherwise, according to the law of the king of Egypt, he could not have been able to hold his brother back with him. For this, only Mashiach could find a way, as a result of which the wish of Yusuf's heart could be fulfilled and for which he did not have to do any such thing due to which he could fall from his lofty rank. This is how we bestow lofty ranks according to our law of Mashiach. Remember, the knowledge of Allah is higher than the level of knowledge of all those who possess knowledge. 12:76. Refer, in addition, to the Lugat al-Quran, the meaning of deen is also law. Support for this also comes from this verse in which it is stated that according to the law, deen, of the king, Yusuf could not have retained his brother. Now the whole matter had come before Yusuf. He had already informed Binyamin about himself. There was no reason therefore for Binyamin to be troubled by this accusation, nor for any apprehension regarding the presentation of the case before Yusuf. Yusuf himself did not proffer any comment on this. But because the brothers of Yusuf already harbored enmity towards Binyamin, because he was a favorite of the father of Yusuf, therefore, in a passion of jealousy and rancor, they burst forth spontaneously that if he has committed theft then that is not surprising, this is normal among them, he had a brother who was the very same. Just imagine what must have been going through the heart of Yusuf on hearing this accusation. But at this moment in time the situation demanded that he should not disclose himself before them, so on hearing this he remained impassive. And spoke only to say that, by making your brother out to be a thief, you are not giving a good impression about yourselves either. You are also kinsmen of this same family. At this, the brothers of Yusuf said that if he has committed theft then it is not a matter of surprise. He had another brother, he also had committed theft in this way, hence, this issue continues to be habitual among them. Oof! How poisonous was this dagger which was being plunged into the depths of the heart of Yusuf. It must have entered his mind to disclose all their dirty linen before them, but the time for this had not yet arrived, therefore Yusuf reserved this matter in his heart, and only said that whatever you are saying, the true knowledge of this is with Allah. But, if the incident is as you are describing, then, you do not appear to be good people, because even though you are half-brothers, you are still brothers of these thieves. Your family is still the same one. 12:77. The Quran has refuted their accusation in one word when it stated Fa'asara ha Yusuf a finafaziha. You can understand it as in the adage that Yusuf swallowed it. One characteristic of refined and profound literature is suggestiveness, i.e., instead of stating a matter in open and direct words, to express it in an implied manner and to leave it to the depth of the reader's acumen. This style is also found in the Quran and one of its examples is in Fa'asara ha Yusuf a finafaziha. The intention from this was to say that the accusation which the brothers of Yusuf had levelled was false, but that Yusuf did not wish to bring it to his lips for the time being. The Quran has informed us from the circumstances that the accusation was false, but how can our Mufassirin ever accept this? They brazenly declared that whatever the brothers said was truthful. It is noted in Tafsir ibn Kathir. That incident was this, that, Yusuf in his childhood, had secretly taken his maternal grandfather's statue and had broken it. After this it is stated. It is also reported that Yaqub had an older sister who had a waist belt from her father Ishaq, which used to be kept by the eldest person in the family. Immediately after his birth, Yusuf was in the care of his paternal aunt. She loved Yusuf very much. When he grew a little older, Yaqub wished to take him back and appealed to his sister, but the sister refused, as she could not bear to part with him. On the other hand, Yaqub's hankering also knew no bounds and he became insistent. Finally, the sister relented and requested that he be allowed to stay a little while longer and then to take him away. During this time period, she hid this waist belt among Yusuf's clothes. Then a search commenced, and it was not found around the house. The word spread, and eventually it was decided that the possessions of whoever is in the house should be searched. Nothing was found. Finally, Yusuf's possessions were searched, and it was discovered with him. Yaqub was given this news, and according to the law of Millat-e-Ibrahimi, he was handed over to the care of his paternal aunt, and this is how the paternal aunt fulfilled her wish. It was about this incident that the brothers were taunting him today. This is the picture being drawn of a holder of Nubuwwat, may Allah be asked for protection. The question is, what authority or evidence do these people have for what they say? The authority for it is that this is also narrated, i.e., that it has appeared like this in the Ahadith. This plot of tampering with Deen is highly organized. The hypocrites invented false Ahadith and gave these the name of the Ahadith of Rasulullah. The compilers of Ahadith, Imam Bukhari, Muslim etc., recorded these in their collections, and that was why they were given certification of being Sahih Ahadith. Tabari composed history based on these very same Ahadith, and in this way they achieved double certification, i.e., this is how it has appeared in Ahadith, and this is how history has reported it. Subsequently, the Mufassirin in their Tafsir and the historians in their history books have included these without hesitation or inquiry, by simply saying that it is reported like this. It is these very same compilations which are called by the name of Islam, and which is prevalent for the last 1000 to 1200 years. Now there can be no kind of criticism allowed of these Ahadith, because these are called the hadith of Rasool, Ullah, and nor can the Quran be made to be understood by the removal of these tafsir. To do this would be against the maslak of the Safi Salihin, the previous flag bearers of Islam. As a result of this Islam, we were most certainly wrecked, we also sank taking the real Islam with us. When the passions of jealousy and rancor had cooled somewhat, the brothers of Yusuf resorted to begging and beseeching. This is, in fact, the condition of a lowly character, inventing lies and then making craven excuses. They said, O Aziz of Egypt, his, Benyamin's, father is very old, and he loves him a great deal. You may hold back any one of us in his place and let him go. We have found you to be an extremely noble human being. You are very compassionate, therefore we are hopeful that you will certainly accept our request. 12:78. Yusuf replied that, how can this be? You yourself had declared that the thief should suffer his punishment himself. How can we retain someone else in place of him? Yusuf said, Allah forbid. How is it possible that we release this person from whom the stolen goods have been discovered and in his place capture someone who is innocent? If we do this, then this will be a blatant injustice. 12:79. Do not forget that Binyamin knew that the one retaining him is Yusuf, hence, he was not being subjected to any injustice or maltreatment. When they became hopeless from their efforts, they moved to one side and began to confer among themselves as to what should they do now. When they became hopeless from the direction of Yusuf, that he will not accept their request, they sat separately and began to consult with each other. The eldest of the brothers said, You know that your father took a firm oath from you. Regarding Binyamin, in the presence of Allah, and before this, you have committed a gross injustice in the matter of Yusuf, hence, at least, I will remain here, will not go in front of father under any circumstances, until father himself gives me permission, to return home, or Allah makes some other decision for me. He is the best to make decisions. You go back to father and tell him that your, favorite, son has gone and committed a theft, in a foreign country. There is no doubt that we had made a commitment to you to protect and guard him, but, we could only supervise him in those affairs which occurred within our knowledge. In these kinds of affairs which he hid from us and started to do, how could we take care of him? You can ask those inhabitants where this incident took place. Or ask those people of the caravan with whom we have come here whether we are speaking the truth or telling a lie. 12:80, 82. 1.17 A glimpse of a hardened heart. Before moving on, let us cast a glance at the dagger which is concealed in this accusing sentence that, O Father, your son has committed theft. If there had been no feelings of prejudice and resentment, then they would have said plainly that our brother has committed a theft, or that Binyamin has committed a theft. But to tell the father in an accusing manner that this is the deed of your son whom you used to hold so close to your heart, how deeply wounding is this utterance. And then observe the callousness of their hearts, at what moment in time it is being proposed to plunge this dagger into his soul. At that time when the aged and weak father was already suffering deeply from the sorrow of one son, and after that the news that the second son has also been taken from you is now going to be broken to him. This was an occasion when this news should have been broken with great compassion. But see how the Quran has made this reality evident, that in such situations the stone-heartedness of cold-blooded people becomes even more severe. Consequently, this was how the brothers acted, and on arriving in Canaan, this terrible news was placed in their father's ears in these heartbreaking words. On hearing this, Yaqub repeated the same sentence which he had said to his sons at the time of hearing the narrative about the wolf. Consequently, after this consultation they reached their father. On hearing all of this the father said, No, Binyamin can never steal, this whole tale is an invention of yours which your heart has narrated to you, otherwise, the truth is something else. I will say the same about this which I had said about the matter of Yusuf, 12:18, that it is better for me that I take refuge in patience and fortitude, and not let the family be divided. I have hope that one day Allah will cause me to meet them all, i.e., Yusuf, Binyamin, and the eldest son who had remained behind. This is because he knows everything and causes all affairs to reach their end with knowledge and wisdom. 12:83. Reflect on these words. I have hope that one day Allah will cause me to meet them all. In his heart Yaqub had never accepted that Yusuf is, in actual fact, dead. He was certain that he is alive. Now when he heard all this about Binyamin, by looking carefully at all these incidents his vision deduced that this series of events is a bit unusual. Through this, his far-sighted vision caught a glimpse of everyone coming together again in the loss of Binyamin, i.e., Yusuf, Binyamin, and the eldest son who had not returned with the others. The separation from Binyamin made the previous wounds fresh again, and the memory of Yusuf began to distress him with an even greater intensity. Even though he had envisioned a glimpse of hope, separation is, in the end, separation. When the condition is not one of complete hopelessness, rather, an environment of hope and despair exists, then the intensity of the pain of separation heightens further. The Quran has expressed this internal condition in these words. He turned his attention from his sons and this new wound made the memory of Yusuf fresh again, then sighing, he said, "Oh, the pain of separation from Yusuf." He used to remain distressed as a result of this trauma and his eyes used to remain brimming with tears due to the intensity of grief. 12:84. Then just imagine that, never mind a resolution for this heartache resulting from this intense grief, there was no one around to even share this sorrow with. The sons who were there were such that they were averse to the names of Yusuf and Binyamin. He himself had become aged, and as such had to listen to everything from his sons, and the wound from these remarks must have been even more agonizing than the pain of separation. Seeing this condition of the father, instead of consolation and support in his grief, the sons often used to say, "Will you leave this story, or will you constantly say Yusuf, oh Yusuf? If you keep on doing this then Allah is a witness, you will die of sorrow and grief. And if you do not die, you will certainly be part of the past." 12:85. Yaqub used to listen to all of this and in reply would only say that I do not say anything to you, I only present my grief and pain to the true helper. What, can you not even bear this much? The father used to reply that, I do not say anything to you people, I express my grief and pain in front of my Allah, this is because I know from Allah that which you do not know, that is why the persistence of my hopes does not become severed. I am certain that one day my sons will surely meet with me. I desire that the duration of this wait is not too long, hence, O my children, go once again, find out something about Yusuf and ascertain the welfare of Binyamin. Never despair of the life-giving breeze of the Rahmat of Allah, only those people despair of this who do not have iman in this law of his, i.e., if endeavor and deeds are on the right lines, then these never remain unrewarded. 12:86-87. Observe how a world of hopes is seen to be awakening here. The sons again reached Egypt to obtain grain. Stricken by famine, their condition had become weakened, therefore instead of dealing in buying and selling, they resorted to begging from Yusuf. Consequently, they again went to Egypt, and said to Yusuf that, O Aziz, very hard days have come upon us and on our family. It was not our intention to come to you again, but what can we do, we have become extremely helpless and powerless. We have neither any grain left, nor do we have the full amount with which to buy it. We only have this paltry amount which we have brought with us, please accept it, and do not consider it as a matter of the formal affair of business, instead, allocate to us a full load of grain as alms. Allah gives a noble reward to those who help others. 12:88. Just reflect here how renowned was the humbleness and compassion of the Aziz of Egypt. Yusuf, that these, strangers, entreated with such confidence, do not look at our ability to pay but apply your mercy and kindness and do not consider this as a matter of business, rather consider it as alms and benefaction. How dreadfully painful and instructive was this scene. These stone-hearted and callous ones were asking for alms from this Yusuf whom they had thrown into a well with such mercilessness. Hearing this, Yusuf's heart also overflowed, and he said. Hearing this, Yusuf's heart filled up, and he did not consider any further delay to be necessary now. To them, he said, do you remember what you did to Yusuf and his brother as a result of ignorance and foolishness, is antum jahilun, 12:70. 12:89. Cast an eye on the words is antum jahilun. The eminences of the character of Yusuf are radiating forth profusely. On the one hand were these brothers who, aside from Binyamin, did not hesitate to falsely accuse even his brother of theft, so much so, that they did not even address their aged father other than in a sharp, accusing manner. And it is their own brother Yusuf who, when he reminded these stone-hearted brothers about their conduct, together with this he also stated that all this was committed by you as a result of ignorance and folly. 1.18 Before them is Yusuf. Due to the magnanimity of his heart, Yusuf softened the severity of the accusation in this way, but despite this, just imagine what would have been the state of the hearts and minds of the brothers on discovering that Yusuf himself was standing before them. The Quran has described this state of commotion in a unique style. It is stated that when the brothers heard these words from the lips of Yusuf, they burst out in bewilderment. They said, "Oh! Are you Yusuf? Really Yusuf?" 12:90. Yusuf said. He said, "Yes. I am Yusuf and this is my brother, Binyamin. From your side, you had left no stone unturned in order to destroy us, but our Allah has been very bountiful to us. And it is a fact that whichever individual, saving himself from the wrong paths of life, remains steadfast on the righteous path, Munyadaki wa Yasbur, and whatever difficulties appear on this path confronts them resolutely, then he does not let the endeavors of these people who live a balanced life go to waste." 12:90. Just reflect what a great reality Yusuf has summed up in 2 words, Munyadaki wa Yasbur, whoever, saving himself from the destructive path of life, seeks protection within the divine law and then remains steadfast in the face of a deluge of difficulties, Allah's favors become showered upon him. That Allah who never allows the endeavors of his devoted human beings go to waste. What the brothers of Yusuf must have felt after that is not reported, it can only be imagined. They bowed their heads in shame and mortification, and said. Hearing this, their heads became bowed with shame and mortification and, they said, "By Allah! He has truly given you superiority over us and we are certainly great offenders." 12:91. Ponder here that those brothers who had treated Yusuf in such a manner that up until the present time this has become renowned in the world as a symbol are today standing in front of that same brother in the status of criminals with their heads bowed down. This was the time to take full revenge on them, but those on whom Allah has bestowed a vastness of magnanimity do not take personal revenge. Their friendship and enmity, forgiveness and revenge are under the obedience of divine values. Consequently, Yusuf stated. Yusuf said, "Go. I do not reproach you any more. Whatever you did against me, I forgive you for that. But what you did against your own self as a result of this, who can forgive you for that? The only way to recompense for that is that, by living life according to the divine laws, to come under the protection of Allah. By compensating you for the deficiency which has occurred in yourselves as a result of these crimes, He will cause it to develop. He is the best of nourishers and sustainers." 12:92. Allahu Akbar. The brilliance of the eminent character of Yusuf is visible in its full glory. After that he told his brothers that this is what you should do now. Return home and, take this shirt of mine with you, which is a physical sign of my status and prestige. When you present it before our father, he will understand the whole matter, and he will believe whatever you recount to him. Then, bringing the whole family, come back here. 12:93. 1.19 Yusuf's attire. These very same brothers had previously brought a shirt to their father, seeing which the father's eyes had become pale with perpetual tearfulness. Today these same brothers go to that same father, taking another shirt belonging to that same brother, from which the aged father is regaining his lost treasure. The caravan set off from Egypt, and traversing various stages, reached near the village where Yaqub and his family lived. From here the remainder of the caravan continued onwards while the camels of the brothers of Yusuf separated from them. The news of the arrival of the caravan was becoming widespread. It is apparent with what eagerness Yaqub must have been awaiting the arrival of the caravan, such an expectation that all the hopes of the heart must have condensed into a fine point. All the energies of his heart and mind would have been concentrated on one focal point. The Quran has described this ecstatic state of joy and delight of Yaqub in a very engaging and attractive style. It states, "When the caravan of the brothers of Yusuf set off, Yaqub began to say to people that if you people would not presume that my intellect has become senile in old age, I can sense the fragrance of Yusuf and his prestige and stature." 12:94. But how could the vision of those listening see all that which was being felt by the heart of Yaqub, and which was visible to the eyes of Yaqub? It is also possible that some indication via wahi may now have been received, as it seems from 12:96, but those listening called it, Allah forbid, a mental aberration. Those who heard said, "By Allah, you are still lost in your old obsession, every sign of Yusuf has vanished, and you are sensing the fragrance of his prestige and stature." 12:95. In the meantime, the son who had the shirt in his possession reached Yaqub with this life-giving news. In the meantime, that caravan reached Canaan and the shirt of Yusuf was presented to Yaqub with glad tidings, and he believed that Yusuf is definitely alive and also the possessor of this level of eminence and status. He said to the people, "Did I not tell you that I have been given that knowledge from Allah which you have not been given?" 12:96. At this point he said, "I know from Allah that which you do not know." From this it appears that a sign from wahi may also have been included, even though the personal wisdom and vision of a Nabi is no less in recognizing reality. Together with the state of the father, imagine, too, the state of the sons. They could not raise their eyes before their father, with heads bowed in shame, they said. The sons said to the father that we are great offenders, though we are not deserving of forgiveness, but still it is our request that you ask for forgiveness for us. 12:97. Yaqub replied. He said, "I will supplicate for the means of protection from my Rabb for you. This is because in the law of requital, for those who turn away from crimes, there is an allowance for protection and rahmat." 12:98. After this the whole family set off joyfully and excitedly for Egypt. Yusuf welcomed them outside the city. When they reached Yusuf, he had his parents stay particularly close to him, and also said to the rest of the family that now, by the will of Allah, you will stay in Egypt peacefully, i.e., since all of this is taking place according to the law of Mashiat of Allah, hence you will live in comfort. Peace is intrinsically linked to living a life according to the divine laws. 12:99. 1.20 Podiums of Honor and Dignity. Yusuf held a court to celebrate this festive occasion. He had a stage prepared for his parents and all the court officials presented their respects. This was that scene of power and dignity, stature and eminence, which Yusuf had seen in his dream a long time before this day. Today it became true in this way. He made his parents sit on high pedestals of honor and respect. And all his aides, court officials and servants offered their respects to them because of Yusuf. At that time Yusuf said, "O father, this is the interpretation of that dream of mine which I had seen so long ago. My Rabb has made the dream into a reality. What a great blessing this is of his that, having brought me out of the prison, he caused me to reach this lofty status. And by ending this gulf of enmity which Shaitan had imposed between my brothers and myself, brought you all here from the desert, so that everyone can live a life of comfort and respect. The truth is that my Rabb shapes his schemes in a very refined manner and takes them to their completion. Every affair of his is based on knowledge and wisdom." 12:100. In recognition of this immense showering of bounties, Yusuf bowed his head before this true benefactor because of whose blessings all this was brought to pass, and he stated in his presence. With the memory of all these past events, the heart of Yusuf was filled with the sentiments of gratitude and appreciation, and he entreated, "O my Rabb! How great is your kindness that you made me possessor of such great authority and power and bestowed on me the knowledge and procedure for advance planning, foresight, and the management of affairs. O Creator of the universe! Only you are my companion and helper in the present and the future, the world, and the hereafter. Bestow on me the potential that I spend my whole life in obedience of your laws, and that I am included among those righteous people whose full affairs are resolved amicably." 12:101. Just contemplate that along with worldly rule and its grandeur, what the supplication is that is being made, that when I leave this world, it should be as a submitting Muslim and among the company of your righteous devotees in the hereafter. This is the aim of the wishes of a mu'min about deen and the world. How fortunate is that human being, and how deserving is that nation which is blessed with the bounties of both deen and the world by Allah, but all this is bestowed as a consequence of Iman and Amal-e Saleh, not by adopting particular kinds of names and reciting ritualistic supplications. This is that glowing account of a righteous life which Allah revealed to Rasool, Ullah via Wahi. O Rasool! These are those historical accounts which were not within your knowledge and which we have revealed to you via Wahi. You were not standing next to the brothers of Yusuf when they had agreed on their conspiracy and were engaged in secret plotting against Yusuf. Therefore how could you know these events? This is also clear evidence of your being a messenger, but despite this, many people will not have iman in this, no matter how much you may desire it, even though you do not ask any return from them for this. You are expending so much effort for their good without any reward and return. This is surely a guidance and message for the whole of mankind for all times. 12:102-104. 1.21 Interpretations of events. This beautiful story has ended here, but before moving forward, there are a few important points which require our attention again. We have seen that Allah had given knowledge of Ta'il al-Hadith to Yusuf. Since Yusuf had given an interpretation of dreams, it therefore became generally accepted that the meaning of Ta'il al-Hadith is knowledge about the interpretations of dreams. But this is incorrect. As will be explained later, knowledge about the interpretation of dreams can also be included within Ta'il al-Hadith, but by Ta'il al-Hadith is not meant merely knowledge about dreams. Ta'il also means an outcome and consequence, and a hadith means sayings. Therefore, the meaning of Ta'il al-Hadith is to deduce from some saying what the exact meaning of this is, and what will its outcome be. This is called comprehension of the matter, i.e. some matter comes before us and by looking at its background and association and connection and link, to reach a conclusion as to what its outcome will be. Just think, what is the difference between an ordinary human being and an individual possessing wisdom and reasoning in this world? Events and incidents pass by before everyone's eyes. An individual with an ordinary level of intellect only sees what is directly before him, but the eyes of someone with vision can gauge the coming of a storm from the direction of the winds. The life of nations is tied to the insight and foresight of their thinkers. Yusuf was born into a tribe of shepherds and cattle herders in Canaan. Though the leadership of the tribe was in their family, it is obvious that for urban politics or for the intricacies and affairs of sociology and economics, he could obtain neither any teaching nor were there any resources available for training in this. The difference between urban and tribal life is not a secret. Therefore, when such a child from a rural background arrives in the city as a slave, then how can his life be anything more than a slave, a house servant? But Allah had bestowed wisdom of a high degree on him, and together with this provided such opportunities to reach him through which Yusuf learned the practical procedures of administration and organization of important affairs, i.e. the Aziz of Egypt put him in charge and entrusted him with his affairs, and in this way, he gained practical experience of these matters which were related to the characteristics of the urban way of life. This is that point at which Allah has said that this arrangement was done through Mashiat in order to teach Yusuf knowledge of Ta'il al-Hadith. For the teaching of knowledge about the interpretations of dreams there was no need for establishment in the land with power. In this way we established Yusuf in the land of Egypt and made such an arrangement that he obtains excellent teaching and training, and he acquires the ability to understand issues and events and could draw correct conclusions. Allah ensures the success of his schemes, but most people do not understand why and how this is taking place. 12:21. It was as a consequence of this wisdom bestowed by Allah and the practical teaching that when the responsibilities for governance and state were assigned to Yusuf, he administered these affairs with such balanced judgment that all heads became bowed before him. While thanking Allah for these blessings, he acknowledged what a great favor it is from him that he bestowed me with a state, and together with this also provided me with knowledge of Ta'il al-Hadith. With the memory of all these past events, the heart of Yusuf was filled with the sentiments of gratitude and appreciation, and he entreated, "O my Rabb! How great is your kindness that you made me possessor of such great authority and power and bestowed on me the knowledge and procedure of advanced planning, foresight, and the management of affairs. O Creator of the universe! Only you are my companion and helper in the present and the future, in the world and the hereafter. Bestow on me the potential that I spend my whole life in obedience of your laws and that I am included among those righteous people whose whole affairs are resolved amicably." 12:101. From these places the meaning of Ta'il al-Hadith is clear, i.e., the ability to determine an outcome from the environment and circumstances which are present before one. 1.22 The world of dreams. The reference to dreams in the story of Yusuf has a prominent position. What is the reality of a dream? This issue has continued to be the focus of attention for men of intellect and vision since the time that man started to reflect. In modern times, experts in psychoanalysis, especially Sigmund Freud and thinkers like him, have specifically made this issue the subject of their attention and concern, research and investigation, and as a result of their practical efforts light has been thrown on some aspects of this riddle. Since this field is still in its infancy, that is why the light is still somewhat hazy, but in the meantime some outlines and aspects of this subject have certainly appeared before us. According to this discipline, apart from a conscious mind, man also has an unconscious mind. There are many occurrences and details in human life which the conscious mind remembers for a while, but after that either completely forgets these occurrences or removes the imprints of their particular perceptions and impressions from its slate. But the unconscious mind retains the important parts of these incidents and the particular perceptions resulting from them firmly within its domain. These perceptions keep on bumping against the conscious mind and in this way keep influencing man's nervous system unconsciously. Those kinds of illnesses arise from these for which no physical cause can be discerned. This aspect belongs to a separate discussion. For the discussion under view, it is enough to understand that the mind which is not fully conscious, or is unconscious, starts its action at that time when the activity of the conscious mind is in a state of suspension, e.g., during a state of intoxication, semi-consciousness, or in a fit of hysteria, etc. But even more than these crisis events, the unconscious mind gets a far greater opportunity for its action at that time when man is asleep. During this time the activity of the conscious mind is suspended, and there is no kind of disturbance or turmoil in the physical body. That is why the semi-conscious or unconscious mind opens up the album of its magic and then presents different scenes of forgotten tales on the screen of the mind. The order of the events and the coordination and control of their outcomes and effects is a trait of the conscious mind, therefore there is no mutual coordination or order in the perceptions or pieces of events which the semi, or unconscious mind presents. Furthermore, the film presented by it is a bizarre assembly of disorder, though sometimes certain pieces also appear which are quite orderly. This is what is known as a dream. In these perceptions which the conscious mind forgets and the semi, or unconscious mind keeps collected in its store, thousands of unfulfilled desires, hundreds of suppressed wishes, dozens of such ravenous gazes which have become buried deep down in the depths of the heart as yearnings, become awakened. When the world of the conscious mind is asleep, then these slumbering longings awaken. But due to a lack of order in the topic, they appear as a magical fairy tale. And when the conscious mind opens its eye, then some fragment of this tale refreshes the faint memory of some forgotten event, just as the sound of a flute producing some vibration arising far from the other side of the valley in the misty silence of the night provokes a sweet ache in the tender and delicate corners of the heart. But this happens rarely. More often than not, the thread of a dream is obscured in its own disorder. Experts in psychoanalysis search for secrets hidden within the layers of the semi, or unconscious mind in these disjointed pieces of dreams. For this they have to make efforts requiring a great deal of persistence and patience. They determine the circumstances and state of the former life of the dreamer. They search for the tips of those misdirected arrows which, having broken off, remain stuck inside the heart. They look for those thorns which have drowned in the life blood but then never resurfaced. In this way they analyze the flow of thoughts of the dreamer and the state of his mind, and through this reach some important conclusions. But all this is conjecture. Even they cannot assert anything with certainty. It also sometimes happens that, as a result of their assumptions, these analysts connect the contents of the dream with future events. And sometimes it also happens that events of the future turn out to be according to the dream or its interpretation. But these are merely chance occurrences, and they have no connection with facts. For example, what transpires is that it is your intense desire that your future should follow a certain pattern, but circumstances and events do not allow you to move in that direction. Your conscious mind works according to the circumstances and events, but the moment you go to sleep, the semi, or unconscious mind awakens the slumbering world of your desire, and it appears in the shape of a beautiful dream. When you awaken, you become engrossed in your work according to your circumstances and means. Now, in the end, one form from among two forms will become created. Either your future will become molded according to your general circumstances and means contrary to your desires. In this situation your dreams, which used to present your future in the colors of your desires, will remain as mere yearnings. But if it happens that, despite your circumstances and means, you manage to shape your future according to your desires, then in that situation your dreams will appear before you as word for word true. At that time you will spontaneously declare that I already had an indication in a dream of what my future is going to become. In this way your dreams will become prophetic. This is just one example. Other events can also be speculated along these lines. And, as noted above, many things are about coincidences. This is the reality about dreams which has appeared before us through the research of scholars up until the present time. As has already been stated, the science of psychoanalysis and its connotations is still in its initial stages, and it cannot be said that whatever has appeared so far before us is authentic. Nevertheless, whatever has appeared before us according to scientific research is only this, that according to this analysis dreams are the echoes from the past of the lost thoughts and concepts, and buried longings and desires of man himself. These do not have any connection with any other world. Therefore, whatever the kinds of thoughts and beliefs, the world of dreams will be of the same kind. The dreams of those people whose thoughts and beliefs, desires, and aims, are free from contamination will also be clear like a mirror. For those whose intellect and vision has been purified, the world of their dreams will also contain the melody of waterfalls of pure and flowing springs and streams. In terms of their purification and eminence, the thoughts and concepts of the Anbiya used to be at the highest level of human attainment. Hence, just like the world of their hearts and vision, so were their dreams also. Now remains the question of the interpretation of a dream, and as has been stated before, its connection is with human judgment, which leads to a speculative conclusion in light of the circumstances and details of the events. It is obvious that these kinds of interpretations are purely conjectural and presumptive, and there is no difference between a Nabi and a non-Nabi in these, because whatever even a Nabi says in this regard will be based on his personal judgment, as a human being, and will not be based on Wahi. With this introduction in mind, contemplate the dreams in the story of Yusuf. The first dream is by Yusuf himself. Even though it was around the period of his childhood, being the bright offspring of Nabuwwat, and also due to become a Nabi himself, his dream was therefore also a reflection of these lofty thoughts, the abodes of which were his heart and mind. The sun and the moon, and the bright stars in prostration. This was the dream, and Yaqub, who could see the high stature of his son brightly visible in his character, was the one to give its interpretation. The second dream was that of the companions in the prison. In connection with its interpretation, it can be said that by remaining with them for a period of time, the wisdom of Yusuf would have judged that one of them is innocent and the other is most certainly a criminal. It was also not difficult to recognize the flow of their thoughts, therefore, the interpretation of the dreams was not at all difficult. This was in fact simply a display of Yusuf's ability of ta'il ul-hadith, i.e. in this the understanding and resolution of matters had a greater role to play. However, in this context two things are worthy of attention. On the one hand, the Quran has mentioned this interpretation in such a way that our thoughts can travel in the direction that Allah had provided knowledge of this to Yusuf via wahi. After providing the interpretation, Yusuf declared that the matter about which you are inquiring has been decided. And that decision is the one about which I have informed you, 1241. On the other hand, in the next verse the Quran has stated that among them the one about whom he had assumed, Zan, that he will be released, he said to him, 1242. Here it is stated that this interpretation of the dream by Yusuf was his Zan, guess. Regarding the meaning of Zan, Imam Raghib has written that whatever conclusion man arrives at through the indications of some matter is called Zan, and this is purely conjecture and inference, this is not a definite thing. From here it becomes obvious that this interpretation was the outcome of his own judgment. In the case of wahi it could not have been called Zan. Wahi is certitude, in fact an extreme state of certitude. The third dream is that of the king. For someone astute and perspicacious like Yusuf, who would have been witnessing and studying the circumstances of the country with sharp eyes, it was not at all difficult to assess in which direction the agricultural economy of the country was heading. The king's dream was a reflective mirror of the state of affairs. The Quran has not reported that in this the basis of the interpretation and solution was knowledge from the direction of wahi. Up till now in the story of Yusuf was a description of the dreams. But in the Quran, there is also reference to another two important dreams. We think it would be a suitable place to mention these here as well. One of these dreams is Ibrahim's, about the sacrificing of Ismail, and the second dream is Rasool's, about the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Ibrahim saw in his dream that he is sacrificing his son in the path of Allah. He assumed it to be a command from Allah and became inclined to sacrifice his son. At this point Allah himself told Ibrahim that this was merely your dream which you considered to be reality, this was not a command of Allah. Details of this have been covered in the Meanings of the Quran, Volume 3. The other dream was Rasool's about the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Rasool came to Medina after migrating from Mecca. Here, his mission was met with exceptional success. But because the center of the divine system was the Kaaba, hence the desire for its possession continued agitating in his heart. It was a consequence of this intensity of desire that in AH 6, after Hijra migration of the messenger from Mecca to Medina, around 628 AD, he saw in a dream that after entering Mecca with the companions, he was circumambulating the Kaaba. Up until that time Hajj had not become a duty for Muslims, but before the advent of Islam Arabs used to perform Hajj and also Umrah. Accordingly, Rasulullah made the decision based on his dream to go to Mecca with the intention of performing Umrah, and in an intensity of eagerness a Jamaat of almost 1,500 companions also accompanied him. He was still about one stage away from Mecca at a place called Hudaybiyah when the Quraysh sent a message that they will not allow him to enter Mecca, and that he should come back the following year. Consequently, according to this an agreement was also forged with the Quraysh and Rasulullah returned to Medina. Following this, disquiet arose in the hearts of the companions that when Rasulullah had formed this resolve based on his dream, then why had it not been successful? In the narration it is also stated that, Umar bin Khattab inquired directly from him that did you not say that we will circumambulate the Kaaba? Rasulullah replied, but I did not say that this will be done this year. The Quraysh ridiculed Rasulullah's dream and its failure, Allah forbid. In the words of the Quran, this dream became a cause of fitna for people. 17:60. 2 years later, when Makkah was conquered and Rasulullah entered it victorious and successful, then Allah said, Allah made the dream of his messenger become true. 48:27. At this point we have not given a detailed description of these events as the topic under discussion is only the account of dreams. Details of these events will be given at their own place. From the above explanation it is clear that 1. This dream of Rasulullah's was a reflection of his intense desire for the possession of the Kaaba which remained active in his heart. 2. Based on this dream, he also formed the decision to perform Umrah, but this remained unsuccessful. 3. In relation to the interpretation of the dream there was a personal error of his in which he stated, in response to Umar's question, that I did not say that we will do it this year. It is clear from these explanations that there was no intervention of Wahi in the dream of Rasulullah either. It is clear from whatever has been written in the previous pages that dreams are a kind of confused reflection of man's own thoughts and ideas, they have no connection with some sort of other world. Therefore, to declare the world of dreams as being a permanent entity, and to base reality on it, is nothing more than the fabrication of fictional tales. The relation of reality is with knowledge. Ordinary man obtains knowledge through effort and skill which is factual as well as presumptive. Absolute, unequivocal knowledge is obtained through Wahi. Dreams have no connection with both these types of knowledge. Neither can someone's dream be an authority for anyone else, or for the dreamer himself, nor does its interpretation carry any divine authority in it. But after having turned their faces away from facts, in the same way that hundreds of doors of superstition have been opened among Muslims, the myth of dreams also became included in them, e.g. that such and such an elder appeared in a dream and made this pronouncement. Now obedience of this becomes a greater priority than a verse of Allah. Not only a priority, but even if that pronouncement of his goes clearly against the command of Shariat, even then preference is given to it by asserting that Shariat is superficiality whereas that elder is acquainted with the truth. That is why such a secret is concealed in his statement which a superficial gaze cannot fathom. Not only this, but the irony is that even the tafsir of the Quran is carried out by dint of knowledge derived from dreams, ilm manam. For example, if the clear-cut meaning of some verse of the Quran does not serve their purpose, they will say that it is written in the book of interpretations. Tabir nama, regarding a certain word that by this is meant such and such, and in the Tabir nama there are dozens of meanings noted for each and every word, so that everyone can obtain an interpretation according to their own agenda, therefore this is the meaning of this verse of the Quran. In other words, for these people the Quran is a collection of the dreams of Allah, Allah forbid, whose tafsir, rather, tabir i.e. interpretation, will be carried out according to the tabir nama of dreams. No just estimate have they made of Allah, 22:74. A tafsir of facts according to their conjectures and nonsensical utterances. And over and above this, the claim that the source of this Quranic understanding is a special divine knowledge. Let us move a step even further than this. Allah closed the door of Wahi, after Rasulullah, and these people have opened these portholes. One among these is the porthole of dreams, which are called Mubasharat, glad tidings, and Mubasharat is declared to be a 40th part of Nabuwwat. The false claimers of Nabuwwat base their claim on dreams. Just ponder what kinds of dark valleys of ignorance and superstitions a Muslim is stumbling around in by abandoning the fountainhead of light and guidance of the Book of Allah. 1.23 Sajda, prostration. We have seen in the previous pages that when the family of Yusuf arrived in Egypt, Yusuf laid down a stage for his parents and the court officials paid homage as a mark of respect. He sat his parents on a high, rafa, dais and all the court officials, associates, and servants offered their respect, lahu, sajda, because of Yusuf. 12:100. Regarding the word sajda, it has been noted in the meanings of the Quran. Volume 2, that its meaning is not that of placing the forehead on the ground, rather it is a method of the expression of submission, which is only reserved for Allah, and the truth is also that the head of man should never bow down before anyone other than Allah. Therefore, in the story of Yusuf by sajda, it does not mean that the court officials, or his brothers, in actual fact placed their foreheads on the ground, rather, from this is meant paying respect. And if from this is meant that same sajda in which man places his forehead on the ground, then in this situation the addressee of lahu will have to be taken as being Allah, i.e. witnessing this prestige and power, the parents of Yusuf and his brothers all prostrate before Allah. But according to linguistics, the addressee of Rafa, i.e. Yusuf, seems to be more appropriate for the application here of lahu. That is why from this aspect the correct meaning of this verse will be that which has been expressed earlier, i.e. the attendants of the court, and the brothers of Yusuf, respectfully and ceremoniously bowed before him. Or if the meaning of lahu is taken to be for the sake of Yusuf, then the meaning of this will be that when the parents and brothers of Yusuf witnessed this prestige and eminence of Yusuf, then they did a sajda of gratitude because of this before Allah. In any event, it is obvious that for a Muslim to prostrate before anyone other than Allah, even as a mark of respect, cannot be legitimate under any circumstances. By prostrating on the doorstep of Allah, a moment passes by the doorsteps of the whole world with stout-hearted indifference. 1.24 The case of Egyptian rule. The Quran has neither elaborated on whether the king of Egypt had accepted Iman in Yusuf or not, nor does history cast any light on this matter. That is why nothing can be said with certainty regarding this. But it is evident that Yusuf was a messenger of Allah, c. 6:83-84, regarding his risalat. His aim was not simply this, that by having his innocence proven, to leave the confinement of the prison, and after this, by participating in the rule of the king, to reform the system of the government. The responsibility of a messenger is to pass on the message of Allah and to establish a system of life in accordance with it. It appears from this that the king would have accepted Iman in the risalat of Yusuf. The circumstances also seem to favor this. The king had witnessed his exalted character for himself. In the administration of the country his wisdom and judgment manifested themselves clearly before him. When all this had appeared before him, then what could have prevented him from accepting Iman in the truthfulness of Yusuf? Then Yusuf remained in that country until the end of his life and was established in the land there. If he, the king, had rejected his invitation, then Yusuf would neither have liked to remain there, nor would he have allowed him to remain there. From these inferences it also appears that the system of the country would have been shaped along the lines suggested by Yusuf, although according to the context this was called the law of the king. What kinds of powers was Yusuf in possession of there? For this, look again at these words of the Quran where it is stated that in this way we established Yusuf in Egypt so that he could run the affairs there as he wished, 1256, i.e. his powers were so wide-ranging. Regarding this point, it is written in the Bible 150 that the king had accorded full powers to Yusuf. Yusuf himself stated that my Allah bestowed government on me, 12:101. It is also clear from this that ultimately it was the government of Yusuf which became established. It is evident from these explanations that Yusuf, Allah forbid, was not a helper and supporter of a pharaonic system. In fact he transformed this pharaonic system into a divine system. In this regard the greatest and most concrete evidence is this. That an individual who makes this declaration in a prison that the right to govern belongs to none but Allah, 1240, and he has commanded to not obey anyone except him, 1240, can it be thought even for a moment that he would have adopted subservience to a batil system? From a verse of Surah Mu'min it becomes known that this nation had also accepted Iman in Yusuf, though not all of them. Consequently, in connection with the story of Moses, whose messengerhood appeared about 400 years after Yusuf, a male Momin of the court of Pharaoh states to his people. And look. Before this, Yusuf also came to you with clear laws from Allah, but you too never gave up doubting these laws. So when he died, you were pleased that this episode is over. Now, after this, Allah will not send any other messenger to us, and there will be no one to forbid us from what we do. 40:34. It becomes clear from this that Yusuf had caused his message, Risalat, to reach the people of Egypt. Now the question which remains is whether the nation as a whole rejected it, or whether it was accepted as well as rejected. As has already been noted, the fact that Yusuf remained in Egypt for the whole of his life and remained in an eminent position confirms this matter that his message was accepted. Otherwise it is not possible that he could have remained there in a prestigious position despite the opposition of the whole nation, and nor that as a messenger he could have desisted from preaching. Therefore, in light of this reality and the striking speech by the male Momin of the court of Pharaoh, we can reach this conclusion that his message was both accepted and doubted, and also that the king and the constitution of his government was in accordance with the will of Yusuf. For this, bring that great evidence before you again which has just been referred to, i.e. the right to govern belongs to none but Allah. 1240. 1.25 Nubuwwat and lineage. From the Quran it is evident that after Ibrahim his son Ishaq was also a Nabi, then after him his son Yaqub, and after Yaqub his son Yusuf too. A superficial gaze may draw the opinion from this that Nubuwwat had continued to transfer as an inheritance in the family of Ibrahim. This is not correct. Look under the topics of Nubuwwat and Wahi and the reality will become clear that, leaving aside getting Nubuwwat as an inheritance, this could not even have been obtained by someone through effort and skill. In Islam even government cannot be obtained as an inheritance, never mind getting Nubuwwat as an inheritance. Nubuwwat was bestowed purely by Allah. Before receiving Wahi, the prospective Nabi did not even know the day before that he is going to be bestowed with Nubuwwat, leaving aside that Nubuwwat will become available as an inheritance. Nubuwwat was the outcome of the selection of Allah. This is another matter that if the character of someone meets the criterion set by Allah for this purpose, he would not be rejected just because he is the son of a Nabi. But amongst us, in the same way that monarchy is transferred as an inheritance, Piri Muradi, a mystic or Sufi and their disciples, is similarly transferred. The son of a king, first a crown prince, and then, becomes a king. Similarly, the son of a Pir, first a Khalifa, then a Pir himself, and this process continues for centuries. This is the same state for castes, Baradari, kinsfolk, and subcastes. The son of a Syed is a Syed, the son of a Rajput is a Rajput. So much so, that this is the case even with names like Qazi and Mufti. In other words, at some stage in the past there may have been someone who was a Qazi or Mufti among their forefathers, his progeny became Qazi and Mufti by birth. This was that veneration of race which Islam had come to eradicate. 1.26 Summary. In conclusion, it seems appropriate that the supreme purpose for which the Quran has presented this account with such emphasis should be summarized in a few succinct words. Living a life of honesty and truthfulness under favorable circumstances and in a compatible environment is not very problematic, but the difficulty arises when the environment is unfavorable, and the circumstances are hostile. To not let tact and truthfulness slip away from one's hand at such a time is truly steadfastness and resoluteness in matters of life. And the truth is that an assessment of the eminent conduct and strong character of man can only be determined under such adverse conditions. You witness that nets of deception and trickery are being laid all around, lies and hypocrisy are allowed to prosper everywhere, and the more cunning and an opportunist one is, the more successful and prosperous one is. Truth and righteousness are being strangled everywhere. In this kind of life, difficulties and hardships have to be confronted at every step. In the race of life, advancement is being achieved through artificiality and deception. One only sees failure in following the principles of truth. You suddenly pause and halt at this crossroad. Mental strife does not allow you to form any decision. The temptation of successes also deceives you. that I should also employ those same tricks whereby other people are getting the job done. On the other side is that of being principled, which becomes an obstruction at every point on this deceptive path. Under these circumstances, those people in front of whom the aim is solely their vested interests reach the same conclusion that we should also do that which other people are doing, never mind what means may need to be employed for this. By presenting this excuse, the deluded self provides vindication that the principled outlook of an individual can produce no result other than becoming the cause of his own ruin. Not only ordinary people, but even the greatest of philosophers also reach this conclusion, in a system which tries to solve the problems of life through intellect alone. Herbert Spencer, a great flag-bearer of the philosophy of ethics of Europe, writes, "For those living an exemplary life it is not possible to live an exemplary life among other types of people. For these deceitful people who have no principles, pristine truth and pure-heartedness is most certainly a cause for ruin. On such a path of life which is contrary to the prevalent way of life it is not possible to successfully remain firm on this. This fact ultimately becomes a cause for the demise of this individual himself or for his generation, or both. Such people should indeed reach these kinds of conclusions. But for those before whom reality becomes unveiled, they stand up like a rock of tact and truthfulness in the face of a storm of unfavorable conditions, harsh circumstances and environment, and then the world witnesses that ultimately, whether during their lifetime, or later on when they are gone, the environment has to bow down before their path. Each and every moment of their righteous life is a reflection of this supreme reality. The illustrious account of Yusuf reveals this very reality. There is no doubt in this, that the eminent character of one individual cannot overturn the system of batil and establish the system of haqq. For this there is the need for a jamaat, but the exceptional character of this individual is of great help and assistance in creating this kind of jamaat. He becomes the first jewel for this. The second thing which appears before us in this account is that in the domain of ways and means, Allah brings the program of His Mashiat into manifestation through the linkages of cause and effect. In causing a shepherd from Canaan to reach these heights where the moon and stars bow before him, it is necessary to pass through the trials and tribulations of blind wells, bazaars of Egypt, and imprisonment and confinement. This is because those heights are only acquired as a consequence of strengthening of the self, the manifestation of which occurs in these adverse circumstances. 1.27 Continuing Surah Yusuf. Surah Yusuf has already been covered up to verse 12:104. It was stated in the last 3 verses that these events were revealed to Rasool via wahi, therefore these are factual, there cannot be any kind of doubt and suspicion in these. But despite this, most people do not accept Iman in these, though, O Rasool, you do not ask for any remuneration from them for this. But there is no need to be sorrowful as a result of this, since the Quran is not only for this nation, that if they did not accept it then it might go to waste. This is a code of guidance for mankind until the last day. If they do not accept it, then other nations will adopt it. Ultimately, mankind will indeed have to return to this very guidance. As is known, the style of the Quran is that, in connection with the consequences of the law of requital, it presents as reason and evidence the outcomes of the path and system of life of former nations, and the functioning of the laws of Allah in the external universe. At the conclusion of the story of Yusuf it is stated that if these people do not pay attention to or examine these kinds of historical evidences, then what is there in this to be surprised or disappointed about? Their state is such that the teaching of the Quran is in any event an ideological invitation which is presented before them in the form of alphabets and words. Whereas their state is such that, how many great visible evidences are there of the working of the laws of Allah in the universe from which they turn their faces away, and do not make use of their intellect and reason. 12:105. There are some such people in the world who do not accept Allah from the outset, but the majority is of those who, though they accept Allah, together with Him they also continue to adopt obedience and subservience to human beings. These are the ones about whom it is said, among them there are some who totally deny the laws of Allah, and most are those who, though they accept the law of Allah, together with this also accept other forces as possessors of authority and rule, and in this way, despite calling themselves Mo'min, remain as mushrik. 12:106. An explanation of this verse has been noted in the Meanings of the Quran, Volume 5. In the Surah, Yusuf, under consideration, the elucidation of Iman Billah has been given in these words, that the right to rule is only with Allah. He has commanded that subservience to any other than him should not be adopted, 1240, and that no one is to be included as a partner in this, 18:110. Also read the topic of shirk in this, it will become clear that verse, 12:106, being discussed is concerning us. It is we who are the ones that claim to have Iman in Allah, while at the same time also adopting subservience to human beings. Leaving aside existing rulers, in the world of religion all obedience is to personalities, forefathers, no matter what name is given to them. Remember, in the matter of deen, wherever some human being is accepted as an authority, instead of the Book of Allah, then this will be shirk. If you look at it from this aspect, the greater the degree to which a person is fanatically religious, the greater the extent to which he will be a mushrik. Secularism is kufr, but this kind of religiosity is shirk. This is what is declared in the verse under discussion. The consequence of denial and violation of the laws of Allah and the mixing of haqq and batil, shirk, is ruin and destruction, 2:85. Attention has been drawn towards this reality at this point when it is stated, have these people become fully satisfied that among the destructions to come according to Allah's law of requital, such a destruction will not come to them which can encompass them from all directions? Or that impending revolution may arrive suddenly in such a manner that they have no inkling of its coming? 12:107. In the next verse the essence and fundamentals of deen have been presented succinctly in a few words. The Quran presents every single one of its proclamations according to knowledge and vision and causes it to be accepted according to reason and evidence. It also demands this from the opposing faction. It simply does not acknowledge as Iman that which is brought about through compulsion, i.e., those proclamations which are not accepted through using knowledge and intellect. It simply does not declare as being Iman. You can look at the topics on knowledge, intellect, and vision, etc. This reality will become crystal clear to you. Since a great detail has already been written about the fundamental reality of deen in previous volumes, there is therefore no need to go into further detail here. After mentioning here those who do not employ reason and reflection according to knowledge and intellect in the invitation of the Quran, it is stated, say to them that my path is clear and straight and that I invite you to Allah according to reason and evidence, witnessing this with my own eyes. I myself do this and those who will be my followers will also do the same. Allah is far above this. That he may also be in need of any other forces to operate the universe, therefore I am not one of those who accepts the law of Allah and together with this also views other powers to be masters of authority and sovereignty, and in this way, despite being called a Mo'min, remain as a mushrik. 12:108. Presenting deen based on knowledge and vision and accepting it via reason and evidence, this is the command of Allah, and this is the sunnat, way, of Rasool, and this is what is described as the style and modus operandi of the Jamaat-e-Momineen. In presenting the invitation of deen, the individual who does not follow this technique violates the command of Allah and opposes the sunnat of Rasulullah. In light of this fundamental principle of deen, just reflect that when it is said that Islam was spread in the initial era via the power of the sword, and that whichever individual wishes to leave Islam, murtad, will be killed, how much this is contrary to the fundamental reality of deen. After this, a reply is given to this objection of the opponents that why is a Rasool just a human being like them? The Quran states, and to this objection of theirs, that how can a human being be a messenger, say to them that, even before me Allah did not send any messenger, except that he was a man, Rijal, from among those who resided in that habitation, to whom we accorded Wahi, 1643, 21:7. Do these people, who make such objections, not travel through the earth and see what was the end of those before them who followed such a path? If these people had used their intellect and reasoning, opened their eyes and studied the historical evidences, then this fact would have become apparent to them that, in the tussle between Haqq and Batil, ultimately success and authority was achieved only by those who, saving themselves from destructive effects, lived their life according to the laws of Allah. Therefore, say to them that the decision between Haqq and Batil is not made by this, whether the messenger is a man like other men or a superhuman according to your perception. This decision is made by this, what is the outcome of living life in accordance with the law which he presents? And what are the consequences of going against it? The evidence for this can also be provided from historical accounts. 12:109. You will see under the topic of Rasool that this objection was raised against every messenger, and the reply was always this, that messengers are not superhuman beings. In this verse and at two other places, 1643, 21:7, the messengers are called Rijalan, i.e., men. Though the word Rijal is also used in the Arabic language for these meanings, when we use the words people or individuals, see the Lughatul Quran, it is a fact that all the messengers were indeed men. From this, those people who are bent upon trying to prove somehow or other that women are inferior to men, also use this as an evidence that no woman was a Nabi, therefore this proves that a woman is of a lower status compared to men. If Nubuwwat had been a personal matter of that individual who was bestowed with Wahi, then Wahi would also have been sent to women. But the duty of a Nabi was also Risalat, and the meaning of this responsibility is to establish the supreme revolution by confronting all the rebellious pharaonic forces of the world. If this responsibility had been allocated to a woman, she could not have carried out those specific tasks which are assigned to her by nature. This is the distribution of tasks, which does not mean that women, simply by being women, are inferior to men. After this the Quran describes this challenge which the messenger had to grapple with. The very first phase of Risalat was that the messenger communicated his invitation to the people of his nation and would try to incline them to acceptance of it. In this he, more often than not, had very little success, so much so, that a juncture would be reached where it could be seen that those righteous people who wished to accept it had done so, and the remainder of the opponents will not accept it. On the road to acceptance of this invitation, one matter which would also arise was that when the messenger used to admonish them that if they did not give up their wrong path the consequence of this will be destruction, they would insist that he bring on this destruction speedily. But this had to appear in its own time, fixed by the law of respite defined by Allah. At this they would think that this warning of destruction is merely an empty threat, and it will never happen like this in reality. This reality has appeared repeatedly in previous volumes. After this the decisive stage used to arrive in which the opponents of Haqq used to be defeated, or were destroyed, and the Jamaat-e-Momineen would become successful and prosperous. In this connection refer to the meanings of the Quran, Volume 3, where details of these stages are described. The Quran states that in this struggle such phases come when. But these historical evidences will also inform us that the outcome of this struggle between Haqq and Batil is not settled quickly just like that, for this a long time is required. Thus, sometimes in the case of previous nations this time of respite would be so long that the messengers used to become disheartened that these people will now not accept Iman, and people would think in their hearts that the punishment of ruin and devastation about which they were being warned was an empty threat. Then at that juncture our succor would reach our messengers. So we used to keep the messenger and his Jamaat protected from the destruction according to our law of Mashiat, and that punishment would never divert from the criminals. Hence, just as it occurred in the case of former nations, so the same will happen to these people. 12:110. And at the end all these facts are summed up together in one verse. In the circumstances and conditions which we narrate of nations from the past, there are signs of understanding and wisdom for those people who make use of their intellect and reasoning. From this it will become proven that the Quran is not some self-concocted book. This will show all those claims to be true which were made before this through the previous Anbiya. All those principles and laws have been given in it which were needed by mankind to live a true life. These principles and laws are described in such a clear and explicit way, so that no kind of ambiguity remains in this. This is that code which will serve as a guidance in the journey of life for every one of those nations which holds conviction in its truth and will provide the means of nourishment for it. 12:111. This is the final and complete code of life for the whole of mankind from Allah. On this key point, Surah Yusuf comes to an end.